This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Sam Zitin in the third chair.
My wife is really the value added in this relationship.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming to the speed of a bunch of teenagers locked into a municipal building overnight with a week's supply of sugar. Today's edition is brought to you by Alex Holt, Alex Hunter, Alex Wardrick, Alexandros Tsarikis, which somehow makes it into the Alex, and a new name, which will be going for a while now, Andrew. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ Tiger Woods Wakelin.
What?
And youth group cat herder, community organizer par excellence, Sam Wang Zemming Zitin.
Okay.
Let's begin. Issue number 1. Youth groups are age-specific religious ministries. Faith groups or other religious organizations often use youth ministries to involve and engage young people who attend their places of worship or who live in their community. Many youth ministries usually encompass one or more of the following: encouraging young people, whether they have professed a faith or not, to learn more about a given faith and to become more involved in spiritual life, or providing open youth clubs or other activities for the common good for the young people, sometimes without an overly religious agenda. Question: among the many activities made famous by youth groups down through the ages, perhaps the most infamous goes by the innocent-sounding name Chubby Bunny. How many marshmallows can the average human place in their mouth at once? Samuel Reshevsky Russ.
It's definitely 12.
Oh, see?
Sorry.
No, it's fair because he called me Sam. It definitely was confusing.
Ronnie O'Sullivan Sam.
I'm still going to go with 12.
Oh, Samuel, that's where the
See?
That was, yeah.
What would Samuel Reshevsky Russ say?
I would go with 55.
Ronnie O'Sullivan Sam's going to go with 12.
Yes.
Well, since one marshmallow is 21.195 centimeters cubed, 21.195 centimeters times 2 equals 42.39 centimeters. Since 2 marshmallows fit 42.39 centimeters cubed, there's about 7.61 centimeters cubed left in the mouth. About 2 marshmallows fit in the average human mouth. Oh, you thought I meant shoving them and crushing them in. No, sadly, that makes you both wrong. Issue number 2. A special interest group is a community within a larger organization or society with a shared interest in advancing a specific area of knowledge, learning, technology, or agenda where members cooperate to effect or to produce solutions within their particular field and may communicate, meet, and organize a variety of activities. Question: although special interest groups run the gamut of societies and organizations, most of the most powerful are political of one stripe or another. How many of the top 10 special interest groups in America are overtly political organizations of one side or the other? Ravi Russ.
All 10.
Sri Sir Sam.
11.
11. I should actually give you 11. Sadly, the answer is 7. 7 of the top 10. Unless, of course, you believe all of the foul things they say about those sneaky doctors, in which case the AMA can be rough customers indeed. Issue number 3. A code name or cryptonym is a word or name used sometimes clandestinely to refer to another name, word, project, or person. Names are often used for military purposes or in espionage. They may also be used in industrial counterespionage to protect secret projects and the like from business rivals. Although code names are very important in clandestine work, they can get quite tricky, and thus rules and procedures are often put in place to keep wild code naming in check. Question: what is the primary rule of providing code names for the United States First Family? Radiant Russ.
Acronyms.
Salutary Sam.
They can't be based on month.
You've run out of time. And sadly, even though I put the clue right in front of your face, you are both wrong. They must be alliterative. They must all start with the same first letter. For instance, President Obama chose Renegade for himself from a list presented to him by the Secret Service in 2008. And Michelle Obama then became Renaissance, while Malia and Sasha became Radiance and Rosebud, respectively. And you guys are both Wrong. Issue number 4. A tontine is an investment plan for raising capital devised in the 17th century and relatively widespread in the 18th and 19th centuries. It combines features of a group annuity and a lottery. Each subscriber pays an agreed sum into the fund and thereafter receives an annuity. As members die, their shares devolve to the other participants, and so the value of each annuity increases. On the death of the last member, the scheme is wound up. In a variant which has provided the plot devices for most fictional versions and a specific particular game, upon the death of the penultimate member of the capital passes to the last survivor, or the dead last. Question: what was the country of origin of the first tontine concept, also the home nation of the man whose name the term tontine is derived? Rosca Russ.
Everyone knows that tontines are from Hoth.
Australian Mutual Providence Society Sam.
France.
Interestingly enough, it was first used in France, but sadly, it was named after Lorenzo de' Tonti from Naples, of all places. So the answer would be Italy, which makes you both, well, one very wrong and one sadly so close to not being wrong. That's it for now. Thanks for listening and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by
Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello!
Hello!
Shalom.
Hey, and welcome to episode 193, Craig.
That's high.
That is high. Of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Galan.
And I'm Sam Zitin.
Hey, Sam, welcome to the show.
Sam Zitin.
This is very exciting, Sam, to have you on here. Now, I have appeared on a podcast once before with you.
One time.
I think, yes, we were debating the appropriateness of cosplay at various gaming conventions, if I remember correctly.
Roughly.
Yeah, plus or minus.
I've cleaned up my argument in the years since, but,
good.
but something that's
Yeah, I might be mischaracterizing your position, so please forgive me if I have. But Sam, it's great to have you on the show. Now, for those who are not familiar with Sam's work, Sam has been doing, he's been in the gaming industry for a long time, appearing on the Dice Tower Network and various other places, and organizing tons of gaming amongst his local youth group, right, Sam?
That's correct.
So we thought this would be a great opportunity. Sam was available to come on the show, which we really appreciate, to talk about how he does some of that, what games work in that kind of environment, what games don't. Because we get a lot of emails from listeners who ask us exactly that. I get together with kids regularly. What kind of games should I do? What if I have some gamers and some non-gamers? So we thought we'd do that, and then a little later we'll review a couple of games that we think are particularly appropriate for that sort of milieu. Right, Craig?
Yeah. Oh, I think this is a great resource episode for folks who are looking for quick fun games with larger groups. We've listed we have a very extensive list in this episode. Sam comes up with a really cool set of rules to sort of follow, or guidelines to follow, to look for other games that'll fit in. And then the big review at the end. I think it's a good one.
It's a chock full episode. So thank you, Sam, so much for joining us.
Chock full of goodness.
So before we get to all that, we do have a few, things to get out of the way. Sam, are you going to Gen Con this year?
I wish I were going to Gen Con this year.
Sad. Sad.
It actually doesn't work out on the Jewish calendar so easily this time. But
well, sometimes these things happen now. But at Gen Con this year, we will be again hosting our Play by Mob, which I know, Sam, you have attended in the past.
And I have had fun literally 100% of the time.
Excellent. Well, that's good.
There you go.
A ringing
mathematically
endorsement.
and unsolicited testimonial.
That's right. So if you'd like to join our Play by Mob, all you have to be doing is two things. One, getting to Gen Con. Two, purchasing a ticket to the Thursday night 9 p.m. D6 Generation Play by Mob event. 2 hours of amazing fun. Right? And again, 2 full hours for only $2. That is $1 an hour. You can't get entertainment that cheap.
I mean, that's crazy.
You can't buy coffee that cheap.
That's almost as good as 4 hours for free.
It almost, but not quite. But you're there in person. So, and also, it's the only place at Gen Con you're guaranteed to see Craig, myself, and Nicole in one spot. So, for very exciting. And then also, though, if you for some reason you can't make it Thursday night, maybe you're not there on Thursday, maybe you got other commitments. We understand. We're a little sad about that, but we understand. Friday morning, Craig, we will be at the Dice Tower booth.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
Dice Tower booth at 11 a.m. So
Yep.
if you're wandering around the vendor hall and you're like, wow, I am so bored, there's nothing to see here,
Nope.
which happens all the time, right,
does.
Sam? The vendor hall can be very dull. So go ahead, over to the Dice Tower booth and say hi to Craig and I. If you happen to get caught up in all the crazy game goodness and buying the new hotness and whatnot, and you can't find time to say us, we understand. That's why we're saying come Thursday night when the vendor hall's closed. That's really what we recommend. But should you be on the vendor hall floor, say hi to us at 11 o'clock.
That's true. And I'm going to take this opportunity to say that there will not be, all my books are usually available at the Wild West Exodus booth, of course, because they're Wild West Exodus booths. The new book that just came out, Legacy of Shadow, is not a Wild West Exodus book. It will not be available anywhere at Gen Con. However, if you get a copy by Amazon or through the Winged Hussar website or barnesandnoble.com, you can bring it to me at any time, and I'd love to sign them, but we will be there from 11 to noon at the Dice Tower booth, and I would love to sign there as well. But we'll also have lots of these little games that we're talking about this episode, which we can also probably play with you.
Yeah. Well, anything to pass the time, really.
That's right. It's an hour. Come on.
right.
And so, I noticed that Russ has keenly scheduled us right before lunch, so we'll probably be going straight to lunch from the Dice Tower booth.
Yes, but not quite at 10 o'clock, so you have time to go get those. Got to go right to the booth and get the must-buy first thing Friday morning games.
That's right.
But then when you're wandering around with a full bag.
Actually, an awful lot of thought went into this slot.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a prime spot we grabbed, Craig. I had to wrestle Engelstein for it, but we got it. So
I see it. Did you punch him? You didn't punch him.
No one was injured. No mathematicians or engineers were injured in the process of capturing our booth.
Okay, good. So, how about budding game designers? You didn't take out one of the kids, did you?
No, not that I recollect. Excellent. So also, we did happen to run into Sam, first of all, in Dunkin' Donuts not too long ago.
Yeah.
And Sam,
one of the few kosher Dunkin' Donuts we learned.
Right. We didn't know they were such things.
There's more than people know.
Yeah, right. So that's excellent. So, you can listen to Sam explain to us which items on the Dunkin' Donuts menu are in fact kosher. But secondly, and more importantly, Sam, do you remember what else we talked about in Dunkin' Donuts?
You're going to get somebody to buy an episode for $2 to see that, and then that is false advertising, sir.
If I get hate mail that we did not explain what was kosher on the menu, I will return your $2. That's personal for me.
Yeah, that doesn't actually happen. And you should actually make sure the Dunkin' Donuts you go to is kosher if that's what you want to know. But,
right.
you need to call them up.
Sam, right.
we discussed some issues of special interest gaming, like games for specific topics and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. That was a lot of fun. So if you want to get that, Craig, how do people go about listening to the Lost Chapters?
Well, there's a couple ways, Russ. You can become a subscriber, which is kind of convoluted and roundabout and costs you what does it cost now? $2 an episode?
Yeah, $4 a month.
$4 a month.
Which is $2.
Or you can become a patron by going to patreon.com or going to our website and clicking through to patreon.com from the link, and you become a patron and of course that means you're going to kick a couple bucks into the tip jar every episode, and if you go to $2 or more, the entire library of the Lost Chapter is unlocked for you for the entire time that you are a patron supporting the D6 generation.
It's like Netflix for the D6G, basically.
Exactly.
The entire library.
And there's an awesome app that you can do. You can use your phone to organize all of your content for the D6G and listen and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, people tell us it's worth the value, so we believe them. And so hopefully you will too, so try it out. So all that said, what's it time now for, Craig?
Oh, jeez, I don't know. I hit my head today. Achievements in gaming.
It is indeed. And Achievements, again, is brought to us, as always, by our fine friends over at Patreon, which help us keep the lights on and do those crazy things like trekking out to Gen Con with a giant trailer load of games to give away at our Play by Mom event, which is always fun.
This time we actually have to pay somebody to trek it out for us because we're all flying for various
No, I'm
travel
driving now.
arrangements.
I've gone to driving again, Craig. It's
how'd you what?
It's a crazy. It's a crazy thing. I have the craziest
Your summer
plan.
is crazy.
It is nuts.
I don't know anybody who plans trips with so little forethought than you.
Look, there's no reason to plan with too much forethought.
No, exactly. There
Overplanning is overrated.
Exactly. Or you're just like, you're a globetrotter living on the edge.
That's right. Okay. Anywho, so Sam, as our guest today, what have you been playing lately?
I've been playing a bunch, actually. We had my wife and I so we don't get to play too many big, heavy, crunchy games with our youth group. Usually a lot of the quicker, shorter games, which we'll discuss. But my wife and I have been playing a game recently that we got into, which is very big and very crunchy, called Millennium Blades. Have either of you guys seen this?
I have not. What's that about?
Millennium Blades, when I first heard the description, I said, that's impossible. And having played it, it's quite possible. It is a collectible card game simulator.
What?
So it's not a collectible card game. It's a game about a collectible card game. So in the game, you actually play a collectible card game player. So part of the game is, and there's a real-time component. You're quote-unquote opening packs of cards. You're buying cards, selling cards, trading cards, building a deck, and then you go into a simulated tournament and play in a tournament for this fictional card game called Millennium Blades.
That is very meta.
It is very meta. The jokes are very meta. They really knew their audience. I don't know how into CCGs you guys were way back in the day, but in the early days of Magic, there was, when everything was new and fresh and exciting, there was this real sort of feeling behind it. Like, oh my God, there's just the world of potential to me. Right. And the game really captures that feeling while you're playing.
That's cool.
It's very cool, actually.
Now, how long is it? Is it really heavy? Is it like hours and hours of gameplay?
So a 2-player game is probably about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. The card buying / deck building phases are played in real time, and they take exactly 20 minutes.
Okay.
And there's 2 or 3 of those a game. So that's sort of a built-in hour on top, and then depending on how fast you play other than that. So it's not a short game.
Okay.
But it's really rewarding.
Sounds neat. If you're a CCG guy or gal, that sounds like a must-try.
Yeah, especially for former CCG players like myself who don't want to spend all that money to get that feeling of what it's like to jump into a game. It's very cool for that.
You can simulate the new CCG getting into game with only the price of once. You just buy the game once. Now, is it a card-driven game?
It's everything's cards. I mean, there's some boards that you're playing the cards out on.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everything is cards. There's one cool thing they did in this game. There is paper money, which I normally hate. Mm-hmm. But because in this game you're dealing with fat stacks of cash, they actually have these stacks of paper money that are wrapped with a sticker. Mm-hmm. So you're throwing around stacks of cash. It's very tactile. It's very
well, that's cool. Awesome. Millennial Blades. I'll have to take a look at that.
It's very cool. So we've been playing some Cash and Guns with the youth group, actually, which is
classic.
Yep.
Always a good time. A lot of One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Fast and fun. Yep.
Which is always good to see, how well your spouse can lie to you. We've been playing a lot of Codenames. Always a lot of Codenames. Some Splendor. We played a game recently called Ex Machina. Have either of you guys ever heard of this game?
No. I've seen people playing it, but I haven't dove into it much.
The short description is it's like a combination of Apples to Apples and Junkyard Wars.
Oh, so nice.
The judge for a turn will say, I need you to build me a better mousetrap. Mm-hmm. And then you'll take all the cards in your hand, which are random things like rubber bands or a propeller or balloons. And then you play down cards and describe how those things build a better mousetrap.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool.
Very cool. We played some Tales of the Arabian Nights, which is always fun for a while, and I'm reminded why we only play that once every few years.
Yeah, how do you keep that game under like a bajillion hours?
You don't.
Right. Okay.
Eventually, you realize that it's just it runs its course, and
someone stands up and says they all live happily ever after, or they all die horribly in the end, right?
Yeah, typically the latter. But we've played some Quirkle. Mm-hmm. A lot of Coup. There's a lot of Coup around this house recently.
Yeah, nice.
When my father-in-law visited, we played a lot of Coup. He really liked that game.
Yep.
And then we've also been working our way through Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you more about that game later because that sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's really super cool. It's a very, very unique game experience.
Very cool. Craig, what about you, sir?
Well, let's see. Last weekend it rained and it poured, and so Reese asked if we could play some games. So we came down to the pub, which he always loves playing in the pub, and we played a couple missions of X-Wing from the co-op game. And now he wants to paint his own X-Wing, so that's cool. And so he loves that. And then we played another game of Project Z by Warlord. Mm-hmm. And I continue to be impressed by the fact that it really is a miniatures game and not sort of a quick and dirty board gamey zombie apocalypse game. So it's fun. We played we set up a street on my Games and Gears city street, just a straight street with a giant tanker truck crashed in the middle of it. And we had to like run to the tanker truck, and we got swamped by zombies, and he loved it, and he wasn't nervous at all the whole time. And then at the end, he was like, "I hope I don't have any nightmares." Like, why would you have nightmares, Daddy? We just played a zombie game. Like, oh, okay. And halfway through it, I must have said something because he looked up and went, "What's apocalypse?" I was like, oh, okay. Yep. So I guess you have to learn about that sometime.
You gotta build that gamer vocabulary young.
Exactly.
You know, it's not our generation, but in his generation, the apocalypse will come, and you're readying him for it. So it's
exactly.
Right.
Got a couple more games of War Machine in. One versus Nerd Herders Dave with his Convergence. We had a small game that kind of played out and ground down. And then I played another game against Russ.
Yes.
And that was fun. And that was we did a couple things wrong. I won, but I think it's an asterisk because we did I did a couple things wrong with my guys. I think I had it like I could have done a different thing that would have had the same effect, but it's fun. I'm still having fun.
Enjoying it.
Ordered a couple more models.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah. I played. I jumped back into Rafe's D&D group.
Now, are they still playing 5e? Are they playing the?
They're playing 5e, the Dragon Queen, whatever it is, campaign.
Yep.
And it's really the only way I can see a bunch of my friends because they either don't come to any other game nights or they're always playing other games. So I thought, you know what? There's probably a reason, and so I mean, there's no reason for me not to do this. If once a month I can at least see these guys, so I did, and it was fun hanging out with Dave and Andy and Rafe and Ian, and Greg and Justin and Dave's friend Ryan was there, and I had fun, and that was that. And then I played Guild Ball again. And I've got to say, the more I play, the more I think, yes, this game is a longer game than it should be.
Are you timing the turns yet?
No, I am not. I think last night's game was the last game I ever play that I don't time.
Yes.
And in particular against the Butchers. Because the Butchers, of course, they don't care about scoring. They want to kill you.
Right.
And in a game, in this game, it takes a long time to kill a model. You're like wearing them down. Most of these models have between 14 and 20-something hit points, and most damage you do is 2 or 3 at a time. So it takes a long time. But if you're not timing it, they don't care. There's no pressure. They're just going to wear you down. I played against Joe, and he bought a bunch of models and then gave them to me. So I painted up all these models for him, and then they proceeded to crush me. And I scored a goal right off the bat, which I never am able to do. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I'm amazing. This is great. And then I realized, wait a minute, he's not even trying to stop me. Right. And the ball gets kicked back out into the middle of the field immediately after the goal is scored. The action doesn't even stop. So he kicked it out. It landed like in the middle of the other side of the field. And I'm like, oh, maybe I can get to it. And then I proceeded to watch him for 3 turns, not even try to get to the ball because he was just beating on my guys.
Yeah, you need a timer.
What's that?
You need a timer. I'm just telling
you. You need a timer. And these games that don't have point values, there's a certain level of trust you have to have with the game if there's no point value. And I'm losing that trust with Guild Ball.
Uh-oh.
If I look at his it's hard to compare, right? But I'm looking at his mascot, which is a giant bulldog with 10 wounds, a bunch of special abilities, and when you kill it, he gains 2 momentum points, and every model in his team gains 2 movement points and 2 attack dice. With 2 attack dice is huge, right? For that whole turn. Against my Raven has 5 hit points, and when he dies, you lose 2 momentum points, and my opponent loses 2 momentum points, and he's got a couple kind of they're not even remotely balanced, and so you're not paying point-wise for these models, and you can only have 1 mascot, and you get it automatically, so in my head, I don't understand how, I think the mascots have to be balanced, or there's something wrong right there, and clearly those 2 models aren't balanced. But then the thing that really struck home is when you play the Butchers, the captain of the butchers usually is this big, giant, bearded guy with a meat cleaver, and he's crazy, and he's one of the most dangerous models in the whole game, and you're always really scared of him. And Joe bought the Season 2 captain, who is like a girl who's very slight and slim and slender, and turns out has like one better stat in every category and better special rules. So I'm like, okay, again, there's no point value. So comparing your Season 1 captain and your Season 2 captain, they should be roughly equivalent, and they're not even remotely roughly equivalent, which is more than enough, combined with my instincts after playing the game a bunch, that there's a huge balance issue, I think, at least with the butchers and not timing. So I think if you time the game with the butchers, you probably have a chance because they're not going to have as much time to just pound on your guys and ignore the ball the whole time. But even then, comparing those two sets of models, I was a little disheartened.
Yeah.
And then we jumped in and played Arena Rex. It took over 2 hours to play that one game of Guild Ball, which was just a slow grinding. I got 6 points in it, so it was 6-12, and even that I just felt like I never won because the points that I was earning were either incidental or because he didn't care because he knew he could beat me on the other things.
Right.
Arena Rex, on the other hand, is like 15 to 20 minutes a game, and we had a blast. It was my 13th Legion versus his Egyptian guys that I painted for him. I learned, you know what? The way to get these guys to play games is to make them pay for them, and then I paint them.
That's a fair trade. Hey, you're playing games you like. You know?
Absolutely. And so we had a blast, and we hadn't seen the Moratori, the Egyptian guys before, so that was we had a really good time.
Have you got any mounted creatures yet? Anybody on a mounted giant mountain scorpion?
No, nobody's bought a mounted creature yet. Which I mean, the rules for the whole game are very very slim. They probably come down to like 10 or 15 pages for the whole thing. So mounts are really only 1 page of rules. So it's not going to be that overwhelming. But right now I'm still kind of a little hesitant on some of the more complicated little things. And even it's not a complicated game. It's very simple, straightforward, rush around, kill the guys, fun. And we got to play in that big, huge, awesome arena. So that was cool. So that's me. What about you, Russ?
So, we went camping for 4th of July weekend. And we brought along our Risk Legacy that my family's been playing. And we're now into Game 6 of Risk Legacy. And so during this game, we got to the moment where you can launch 3 missiles and something happens. So 3 missiles in one battle were launched and something happened. But, Sam, have you played Risk Legacy far enough to know some of the spoilers?
I have not, but I think it's out of the statute of limitations at this point.
Well, yeah, but I'm still not going to spoil it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But what happened is there are 2 giant pods inside of Risk Legacy. Well, there's about many pods, but the 2 big pods, one of them is supposed to be ripped open immediately if anybody uses 3 missiles in one battle. And then the other one is supposed to be opened if at any time one player is about to put 30 armies on the board. Like, you normal Risk, you get a bunch of reinforcements, right? So 30 is a lot. So if someone's going to put 30 down, something happens. Well, anyway, we did the missile thing, we opened it up, and we realized we didn't know it was inside the 30 army thing, but we knew what we were looking at was actually the game had been mispacked. And we were looking at the information for the 30 army stuff, not the information. And it was cool. We're like, oh my God, but that didn't just happen. So we ripped open the 30 army one and saw that it was indeed what was supposed to happen with the 3 missiles. So we're like, well, crap. So now we wanted to have the other one happen at the same time. We figured it could. So we totally went meta and rigged it so one player during the same game could also achieve 30 armies. Actually let her capture Asia briefly under some very heavy legalese around like, you better not cheat and win because your younger sister should be winning now, but she's going to let you do this and like this whole thing. And like giant, like 50-page contracts were signed. But she did it. And so we got both those big pods open and now the game is like awesome. Two huge events just happened. We're like, holy Christ, we can't wait to play again and try it out. Still loving Risk Legacy.
Cool.
And I don't want to say anything about it because it just totally spoils the game. Then also played some Cash and Guns with some of our friends. I was playing War Machine with Rose at the local gaming store, and some of the kids were there, so we played Cash and Guns real quick. They had the expansions. I hadn't seen all these expansions, Sam.
I want them so bad. I told my youth group kids about the first expansion, and they're like drooling.
They had them all. So they had the one with the big, the 45 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world. They got one of those. They have the one with the 2 small Derringers.
That's what I really want to play.
Where one Derringer, there's a little like hole in one of the Derringers that's inside the pommel. So you point the Derringers at 2 different people, but one of them's real and one of them's fake. So you can totally do that. And then he's got like a shotgun. He's got all this stuff. So that was pretty crazy. So Cash and Guns is still a lot of fun.
Such a good title for the expansion, too.
What's the name of the expansion? He didn't have the box.
More cash, more guns.
Yeah, right. Perfect. Exactly. Yeah, that game, I have the original. I do not have the expansions. I'd like to get them now because it just looks fun. Then I played in another game of War Machine versus my daughter. This time I played Striker 2. So that is Epic Striker. Striker's now wearing an experimental suit and I should say this. So in last episode when we reviewed War Machine, I mentioned that Rose is playing Kaya now, where she could attack after she Spirit Doored. And that was wrong. I mean, I think we reread the card several times, so I think they may have fixed it. It's possible we could have both misread it, but
you think they changed?
They may have changed it
in the app. Yeah,
a couple people tweeted me after and said, "No, Russ, it's in there that you can't do it." I looked up at the app, and sure enough, it was not there anymore, and it's correct in the book. I got the hardcover book now, so I don't know. Maybe we just misread it, but I remember we both read it 3 times. We were both couldn't believe it allowed. Anyway, so that was not allowed. So now I'm going into this new game, right? Like, aha, we've corrected this rule. I'm going with Striker 2. I got this, and we were playing this really cool mission, Craig, where there's a center objective, and then there's 5 objectives on the table. So there's one in the middle, and then there's one right on the edge, 2 on the edge of your deployment zone and 2 on the edge of my deployment zone. And you get a point for owning each objective, but you can only score a point from each objective once. And the first player to 5 wins. So you basically have to capture every single flag on the table once. So you've got to move your army around the table. So I'm like moving my army around. I'm all spread out. And we were playing a bigger point. I had my Storm Strider on the table. It was really cool. And she... Striker, Kaya used her teleport to get all the way across the table, get in front of the last objective. Striker was guarding it, made my big move. Striker's got the super powerful electrical suit, but it's experimental. So you roll 3 dice, add that to Striker's strength for hand-to-hand combat. So it could be up to plus 18 strength. But then you also roll 3 dice, and that's how much wound Striker takes.
Ooh.
So I roll the first 3 dice for Striker's strength bonus. Right as he charges Kaya, he rolls 3 ones. I roll the wounds for Striker, he gets 12. So Striker takes 12 wounds, he's down like 5 wounds left. He attacks Kaya. Kaya's sitting on 4 focus. I smack Kaya, transfers all her points to the Warp Wolf, who's right next to Striker, and the Warp Wolf's got 1 wound left after all this. And remember, I rolled 3 for my bonus strength. So if I rolled anything better than 3, the Warp Wolf would have been dead. Then in her turn, Kaya misses Strikers all 3 times, so Striker lives, but then the Warp Wolf swings once and kills Striker. So if I had gotten anything but 3 once, I'd have had her. But I lost. So it was a great battle, though. So still having a lot of fun with War Machine. I'm loving that game. And then, Craig, have I got the game for you to try?
Sam, I saw it on Twitter.
Sam, have you played Colt Express?
I have seen Colt Express.
Oh, man. This game might work at your youth group, actually. It's up to 6 players, so it's not a huge number, and it doesn't follow some of your rules.
6 is a good count.
It doesn't follow all your rules, but it doesn't matter. It's awesome. So it's basically, first of all, the components are fantastic. It's a 3-dimensional train robbery, and then everybody's playing a cowboy or cowgirl, and they have these little meatballs. But what's really cool about it is you program your moves in, kind of, a la Robo Rally, but very, very simple. So, like, you build a stack of cards. So Craig will be like, I'm going to move horizontally on the train. And then Sam might say, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to climb up 1 level. And then I'll put a card down that says, well, I'm going to shoot my gun. And then Craig will put another card in, and we'll do that based on a number of rounds that are kind of random. And then you flip that whole stack over and start resolving them. And so it just really turns into some interesting stuff because you start trying to think a turn ahead. And it's a surprisingly deep game for such a silly little component set. And it really just works. We played it back-to-back with the family twice. Everybody loved it. We want to get the expansion now. The expansion has little horses and a little stagecoach that rides alongside the train. And everything's 3-dimensional. It's awesome. It's like an upper layer. It's like a whole thing. It's really, really slick. Did
you see the other little special edition expansion they have?
The Back to the Future car.
Yeah.
Yes. The Back to the Future car drives alongside the train also. And it's all 3D cutouts. It's awesome. The components are fantastic. And it's designed that when you first buy the game, you got to build all these cars. But the way the box is built, all the cars go back into the box completely built with little compartments. They don't slide around. It's completely.
That's cool. A big deal.
Great box control.
Huge,
yeah, it's a great, great little game. Totally was expecting a kid's game with just fun components, and it really is a lot more depth to it than I thought. So highly recommend. You see Colt Express lying around, you just pick it up because it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
So that's the board games.
Yeah.
What about modeling, Sam? You done any kind of, working with your hands, building stuff, anything like that?
Well, I'm more like a wannabe miniatures gamer. I've actually painted quite a few models over the years.
There you go.
I've never actually sat down to play a miniatures game.
That's okay. Collecting and painting is part of the hobby. Playing is overrated.
Yeah, I know. I would
That's how
love
I feel.
to. I would love to get in there and play something. I have 2 starter fleets painted up for Dystopian Wars. I've just never
nice.
gotten a chance to break it up.
Nice.
But does Geeky Woodworking count as modeling?
Yes,
I would say
definitely,
yes.
especially if you're building a gaming table. Oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah, so I am building a gaming table.
Oh, wow, nice. Are you building? So are you like patterning it on some of the commercial ones? Are you building your own design? What are you doing?
I mean, the design is mine from the ground up. It's got the same sort of functionality as some of the commercial ones.
Yeah.
I'm trying to build it as simply and cheaply as possible to get those sort of basic functions out of it with the recessed area.
Now, is woodworking a hobby of yours, or this is sort of?
It is. Okay. I picked it up recently. My wife got very into knitting, and I was looking for something to do with my hands. And actually, the gaming table became my impetus for getting into woodworking. I was looking at those tables, and I thought, I think I could probably build that. And I started getting some tools, and then I started working on a bunch of quote unquote practice projects, and I still am only just now starting the table.
Now, have you started with like an end table, then a coffee table, and then you work your way up?
I built my wife a knitting table.
There you go.
There you go.
Little captive dowels to hold her yarn, and
nice.
Some boxes and gift type projects, and a cover for the baby wipes. And
see, I like the construction part of the table and the measuring. I hate sanding with a passion.
Right. That's
nobody likes sanding. That I can tell.
No, nobody likes it.
Right.
And then about a couple months ago, about a month ago, for my daughter's birthday, she just turned 3.
Oh, congratulations.
And she wanted a Sophia the First woodland creature tea party for her birthday. So I built her a little cupcake stand out of log slices and sticks. It's like a little 3-dimensional thing, but it looks like it almost looks like terrain. Like you could see like mouse guard or red guard, red ball characters like running around on something like that. So I'm converting it into a toy treehouse for them. I'm going to put in a little rope ladder and a hammock.
Oh, very cool.
Little bed and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Very cool. Nice. Well, that counts as modeling, Sam. I think that's excellent work. Craig, what about yourself?
What about myself? That is a good question. Well, I finished those models for Arena Rex that I was working on last time around. So that was 6 Morituri, 6 Ludus Magnus, the big muscle guys, and then Noxius, the hated little slave guy. They're really fun. Again, they're not models that are easy to put together. Some of them are downright ridiculously difficult. I'm pinning little pieces because they're breaking off, and so they are really fragile. They are not models for beginners, but they are beautiful when they're all put together. I put together, primed, and base coat painted a bunch of War Machine models I've had in my garage for 5 years.
Nice.
So that was cool. And then I ordered 2 more. So I just built and put together 2 Griffins that are light war jacks for the Retribution, and then a Mage Hunter Assassin, the alternative pose, the Magister, the Artificer, the Soulless Escort, and then I had Fane Knight, Scarith Essian. And I don't know if they changed their stats from one to another or what's going on, but I'm looking at their cards now going, I don't know why I would ever field almost any of these. But I own them now.
There you go.
And then because people who were listening last episode know that you need more jacks.
Oh, yeah.
And I need more depth to my jack stable. So I got the Imperatus, which is a giant character jack that has a special rule that if I can pull it off, means he has almost as many damage boxes as a gargantuan or the big giant monstrous jack. So
I don't
that's
like
fun.
that at all.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then Moros, who is a cool assassination character jack that actually has stealth.
Oh, wait. What?
So, yeah, a jack with stealth. So that's cool.
Yep.
A jack you can't shoot at unless I'm within, 4 inches, is it?
5 inches.
5 inches?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. And they're both beautiful. I will say they were very difficult to put together, and I was really, really cursing the whole time I was putting both of them together. So, again, I'm not sure. If I was a beginner,
resin?
I would.
Are they metal or resin, though?
Imperatus is metal and resin combined.
Yeah.
And Moros is all metal.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask you guys, is War Machine a good first minis game for someone to finally delve into with a...
I would say yes, because the number of models isn't that high that you really need.
Right.
But some of these jacks, the metal ones in particular, are really hard to put together. because the pieces don't stay together long enough for the glue to set. I had to pin the legs on both of these jacks just to get them to stay.
It depends on the faction, right? So if you go with one of the 4 classic factions, they have a lot of plastics now. So they are much easier to work with, like Signar,
the plastics are great. The 2 Griffins I put together were both plastic, which is more of a resin. You can't really use plastic glue with them.
Yeah, but
they go together great.
I have the same problem with the convergence stuff. So I have a lot of the convergence stuff, and the metals in the convergence are super fine. They're super thin, like the Clockwork Angels and some of that stuff. And it's just some of that stuff's really tough to assemble. So go with one of the 4 classic factions. Like the starter boxes are great, easy to assemble, all plastic, real easy to go. You stick with one of those things, you'll be fine.
Okay, cool.
Yep. What Russ said.
Yes.
So that's what I'm doing right now. So that I'm excited about that. And then I finally finished the X Arena Leo. Wait a minute. This earns this.
You need music?
X Arena Leo.
There you go.
For Arena Rex with all the lions and all kinds of cool little details and and little banners that go all the way around like a real arena, Roman banners. And I tweeted a bunch of pictures of that on my Twitter feed at D6G Craig. So if you want to look at and that has by far the most likes and retweets of anything I've ever tweeted. Those 4 pictures of the new arena, which I think shows you the Playmobil arena at its absolute best if you just totally jazz the whole thing up.
I'm looking at it now, Craig. That is gorgeous.
Thank you. I love it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it once this game kind of falls out of favor. Because it's too big to store anywhere. But I'm super happy with the way it came out.
Beautiful.
Thank you, sir. And what about you, Russ? What have you done?
Well, let's see here. So So my level 7 crew has given up on the main campaign in the core set. I have defeated them now 3 times in the Staying Alive mission, and they can't take it anymore. But they also don't want to try to go past that. I was like, well, let's just skip it and pretend you won. Like, no, we don't do that. So the expansion, though, has a whole new campaign, so we've decided to play that. And the expansion comes with a bunch of new models. One of the things is that Kronos, the main sort of antagonist in the original game, escapes at the end of this game, which kind of works with where they failed. So they failed chasing Kronos in the mission they were in, and so Kronos has now escaped to the next story. And in the next story, Kronos is now being defended in a Russian base. And so you're invading this Russian base, which means there's a bunch of Russian soldiers that the good guys got to fight their way through. It's always the Ruskies in the end, right? So I painted up the Ruskies, so that was a lot of fun. And then also, in my new passion for War Machine, I am trying to work on an army that's mostly Cav. And so I want to get my gun mages on their horses. I bought they're called the Blazers. They're gun mages on horseback, light cavalry for Signar. So I bought those a while ago in the first campaign. Never painted them. So now I'm like, well, before I can buy any more new stuff, I must paint all the stuff I have. So I want to get these guys to the table anyway because they look awesome. So I got them all primed up, and I just started painting those today. It'll probably be another week or so before they're ready to hit the table, but looking forward to them as well. So get a little modeling in, not as much as Craig over there, but I got something done.
Well, it's been a long time since we recorded the achievements.
All right. So what about other geeky goodness like books, TV shows, movies? Sam, what have you been watching and reading?
So my wife and I don't actually get to watch that much TV. We're on the middle of season 4 of The Walking Dead. But we're trying to go the month of July without TV just to try and get some stuff done over the summer.
That's a good idea.
So we're stuck there for now, but I'm doing a lot of reading. I just finished Name of the Wind, and I'm on The Wise Man's Fear. Nice. I should thank you guys. Most of my reading recommendations over the last several years have come from the show.
Oh, did we steer you wrong, or are you doing okay?
Not once. Read through Honor Harrington, loved it. Read through the Dresden Files, loved it.
Yeah.
My wife is starting The Expanse.
I like that. Yeah.
Next for me after I finish The Wise Man's Fear. And when I run out of a series and I'm waiting for the next book, I usually sprinkle in some Destroyer novels. You guys ever read those?
I have not.
Which ones are those?
The Remo Williams books.
Oh, no.
So, I caught that Geek Thing Nerdigan used that a while ago.
Yes.
But
Remo Williams.
So the Destroyer books, there's literally 150 of them. they were the original men's adventure series during the late 60s and early 70s. And they ran forever. And it's about this guy, Remo Williams, and his North Korean mentor, Chun. And he learns this martial art called Shinanju, which basically gives him superpowers. And he works for this super secret government organization that just sends him all over to dispatch people. And they're hilarious. They're like pure guilty pleasure men's wish fulfillment. But they're like 150, 200 pages. I read them in like a day. Oh, wow. And I went on eBay at one point and I bought, I think, 40 of them for like $20.
Oh, wow.
So whenever I'm lacking something to read for one of the series, not having a new book out, I usually just sprinkle in some Destroyer novels. So
nice.
Been reading those. Like half of the population of the planet, I've been playing Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about this on Twitter, and I have no idea.
Yes.
So I'm going to go on record, and I don't think this is a very bold statement, but I don't think any video game has affected civilization so quickly as Pokemon Go has.
Yes, that is. You know what's freaking me out about this game? So my daughters are huge Pokemon fans as well, and this thing just sort of rolled on the scene. Like, we're recording this now the Monday after Pokemon Go first release. So Pokemon Go released last Wednesday, so less than a week it's been out. And I don't know, Sam, we got this thing, and there's been other games like this, okay, but this is the first one that has Pokemon in it. And basically it just, it sends you around to places to find Pokemon in the real world. So, and there's a park like, a quarter mile from my house, right? And so I go to this park all the time, so we're walking there, and my daughter's like, let's go to the park. I see some things there we can do in Pokemon. So we walk over, and there's these little virtual locations that you see on there. It's kind of like, Craig, imagine like your GPS map on your phone, except there's virtual locations there as well. So like next to, the entrance to Mine Falls Park or your local grocery store, there might be a little virtual icon that if you get close enough to it in the real world, you can then tap it on your phone and you get free stuff for your Pokemon. Or you'll be walking down the path and all of a sudden your phone will vibrate, and on your phone you'll see a little Pokemon and you tap them, and now the camera in your phone, the screen of your phone looks like what your camera sees, and then there is a virtual augmented reality. A Pokemon's like standing on the path in front of you, and you throw the little Pokemon ball and capture him, and now you got a Pokemon. And then placed throughout your neighborhood or world, there are these gyms where you can go capture control of them, and you become members of teams, and you grab these things. And I don't know, Sam, when I'm walking through the park, it's like every person I pass is playing Pokemon Go.
So I played Ingress for a while, which was like the precursor game to this. And Ingress never really grabbed me that much. I just didn't get it, I guess. It didn't seem like that big a deal. But I literally took my wife on a Pokemon date last night. And shout out to Sheva, my babysitter. She's going to listen to the show, she said. So, but we went near Washington University in St. Louis. We're walking in an area called the Loop, where there are Poke stops like every 20 feet, and we passed 100 people.
Oh yeah,
who were playing Pokemon. I mean, and every ethnicity, every age.
Yeah,
the whole. I mean, I could not believe it.
Wow.
You'd see totally, not nerdy people, not just everyone. Everyone is walking down.
It's just like that. It's not just. You're
and
right.
We had at one point there was like a whole crowd of people, and we get the little buzz on our phone and we run over, and there were like 20 people standing in a circle because there was a Growlithe there, and everyone was trying to catch the Growlithe. And my wife wound up catching him, but he ran away from me, and I got really upset.
Well, it's the same here, and it's not just because you're in a college town. Like, we're in this park, right, just in this little city, Nashua, New Hampshire, and we're in the park, and it's the same thing. Like, we're walking around, and it's normally it's a rainy Sunday, right? So, A, most people aren't in the park in the rain, and then B, usually if you are in the park in the rain, the only people in the park in the rain are like hardcore, joggers and stuff who are out there getting their daily jogging, no matter what. Out there's like everybody. Most of them you can tell are pretty geeky folks that aren't outside much, let's be honest. But then also, it wasn't just geeks. So like, we're walking along and like a grandfather, person that could have been my dad in his truck with his daughter that's like my age in the seat going, Pokemon, what'd you catch? Holding their phones up, right? But like, it's just very surreal. Like, everybody's doing it and you're talking, and it's just like, it's the most socially positive video game I've ever seen, because you're actually out of your house. You're getting exercise, and you're actually interacting with other people. It's a little bit weird.
And if you think about the old Pokemon show, like if you think about what that Pokemon world was,
Yes.
people are walking around, meeting each other, and discussing Pokemon,
Right.
and looking and that's literally what the world is now.
My youngest daughter so we're riding our bikes, right, doing this. And she said, Dad, this is freaking me out because I'm riding my bike and a Pokemon just topped out in the path. And I look at my phone and there he is in the path. He goes, this is just like the old Pokemon DS game. It says, I'm living the game. She's like freaking out. And it is exactly that. But it's funny because my daughters, because they've grown up on Pokemon, playing it on the various DSs, they're like critiquing the game in ways like, really, this Pokemon his power's not quite right. He can't defeat that Pokemon. The music's wrong here. They're really anal about the exact nature of it, but it is, and the game is full of bugs. It's not 100% reliable. It crashes a lot, but it doesn't matter. It's really, I don't know. It just works, right? I don't know how else to. I'm sure it'll burn out after a while, but I don't know. It seems pretty amazing on the first week it's been alive.
It's still missing some stuff, but with Ingress, they added features over time and really beefed up the game, and I could see this just going tremendous places. It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, and the thing is, like, Craig, these gyms. There's 3 different colored teams, right? There's red, yellow, and blue. And so when you go to when you see a Pokemon gym in the distance on your phone, it might be, it's blue, which means it's controlled by the blue team. I'm on the blue team, so I can add one of my Pokemon to help defend the gym there. But if it's a red gym, I can go try to knock the red team out of there and take control of it. So my daughter goes in, knocks them out, and then each person can have one Pokemon defending it there. So you can imagine they're adding trading. It's going to be nuts. And I don't think it'll burn out just because Pokemon as a property has been around so long and has been so popular for so long. I've often said that if Nintendo would just put their stuff on a phone, they'd make a killing, and I think they've figured out a way to do that. So we'll
Nintendo's
see.
stock went up 25%.
I saw that.
Jeez.
I saw that. It is crazy. It passed Twitter as most active users in a day inside the first week of launch, and then also it's the most downloaded app and one of in the top 3 most profitable apps already on Apple.
So how do they make money?
So the app is free, but then it's got one of those freemium models. So as you go throughout the day, you earn a little bit of currency that you can spend, or you can spend real money on the currency to go faster. So most people who have patience don't have to do anything.
Right.
But many folks are like, it's only a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there, and you figure there's millions of people playing the game. So if 10% of them spend a couple dollars, that's a lot of money.
The backside moneymaker, too, which people theorized was the case for Ingress, is that they're selling all this geolocation data.
Well, that's
they're using all this data to figure out where people are and what's going on.
Well, there's 2 things that are happening, Craig, which is really freaky. So the second thing I saw, and I saw this on Facebook, Sam, I don't know if you saw this, but these Pokestops, which right now no one can really control where they are. But
this actually happened not too far from me.
This happened near us, too. So there's a bar in Nashua, right?
Yeah.
And there's a Pokestop right next to it. Now, you can spend real-world money to buy these things called lures. And you attach, you can sometimes get them randomly, but you can buy them. You can attach a lure to the Pokestop, and then more Pokemon will show up there, right? And then anybody standing near the stop will get stuff. So what's happening now, these bars that are near Pokestops will buy the lures to like $5 for half an hour or whatever, or not even that much. And they'll and then they'll put on Facebook, hey, we've got 2 active lures at our bar, come on by and catch some Pokemon while you have a drink. And it's people like Starbucks, the people are doing this stuff. And it's just crazy. So if they can, it's an interesting amalgam of the virtual world and the real world.
What's a Pokemon gym?
So the gym is the places you fight over. So these are like the control territory, and you go in there and you, which again is analogous to the old TV show / game, where you'd go in and you'd, whichever team last took control of the gym turns their color, and if you win the gym over, your Pokemon stays there and guards the gym until someone else can knock him out. Okay. So you try to leave your most powerful Pokemon. If it's a blue gym, then up to, I think it's like 3 or 4 blue players can leave Pokemon in there. So I can leave one.
It depends on the prestige of the gym.
Right.
The bigger higher the level, the more Pokemon get to go in.
So, right. So my
First
daughter.
of all, that needs a cooler name than a gym.
Well, it matches the lore, though, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But because the only story that I've read, and I didn't read the whole thing, but so far was that a man's house was accidentally misidentified as a gym. And so he had a bunch of people coming up to his house and fighting over his house. So
there's been some darker stories of thieves lining up next to lures and trying to mug people and things like that. But I think for the most part,
the local game store near where my wife and I were Pokemon hunting is starting 3 lure Thursdays at 3.
Yep.
They're just gonna every Thursday at 3:00. They're gonna set up 3 lures.
I already saw that our local convention, TempleCon, was already advertising on Facebook. There is in fact a Pokemon stop near their place, and they're going to put lures on it. So yeah, it's already becoming a thing. We'll see if it's still a huge thing a month from now. But I think at this, given the longevity of Pokemon in the past, I don't see it going anywhere for a bit.
Mm-hmm. So that's one sort of augmented reality thing. I also did a virtual reality thing not too long ago.
Yep.
So I may not get paid much for my job, but I do get paid to play board games and go to Six Flags.
Well, that's awesome.
That's cool.
The perks are good.
We took the kids to Six Flags a couple weeks ago, and they have a roller coaster here at Six Flags in St. Louis now called the New Revolution, which is a roller coaster where you wear virtual reality goggles while you ride.
Oh, wow. So it's a full-size coaster with goggles on. So
it's a full-size. It's the coaster, the Ninja. It's an existing roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And what they did was they take their like Samsung Gear headsets, and there's a video. You're in a fighter jet cockpit.
Oh, cool!
And the video is synchronized to the ride.
Right.
So as you're there's actually a button on the side which shoots your guns.
Oh,
so
cool.
you're in like a launch bay, like a hangar, while you're waiting to go, and you can look around and it aims the guns of your little jet. Mm-hmm. And then as you're going up the lift hill, you're like in the belly of a carrier on a lift elevator, cool, waiting to launch. And there's targets you can look at and hit, and you're actually playing a game on the roller coaster. And then when you get to the top of the lift hill, you pop out in the middle of this alien invasion of like a large city. And
very cool.
So you're flying around doing barrel rolls, and everything you see is like spaceships flying and jets flying, and so the maneuvers you're doing in the thing are actually synchronized to the ride, and you feel everything, and it's a next level experience.
That's awesome. And you don't get ill, I'd imagine, because you're moving in the right directions with the video.
Correct.
So it doesn't
There's
give
no
you
weird disconnect or anything.
Right.
The technology is there. The biggest problem is just getting people on and off. At the end of it, we wound up sitting baking in the sun for like 8 minutes while they loaded the next train, which is a problem.
Yeah.
But I could see in the next 10 years theme parks, revamping every ride they have by just throwing on goggles, a virtual skin on it,
Right.
That's cool. I think I saw that advertised at Six Flags New England too, Craig. I think I saw it.
They're popping up all over the place.
Yeah,
it's very cool. And the last thing was my wife and I watched a movie a little while ago called Turbo Kid.
Oh, yes.
Did you see it?
I saw parts of it. I haven't gotten to sit down the whole thing. But this is sort of like the homage to 80s movies, right? It's kind of like an 80s.
Specifically 80s like post-apocalyptic movies. Yes. It's not a parody like Scary Movie or anything like that. It's really a love story, a love poem about post-apocalyptic movies from the 80s.
Yes.
But I mean the music is perfect, the scenes are and it has Michael Ironside, which you need.
Oh, absolutely.
It was actually a Sundance entry, and I think it actually did well at the festival. I mean,
it's pretty good. I saw, like I said, I saw about an hour of it. I liked it. I just fell asleep, but I did enjoy it, and I caught it was really the little stuff, the little homages to it. It is like a little. It is a little love story to 80s apocalypse movies.
Yeah, we love that. It was very good.
Very cool. Very cool. Craig, what about you, sir?
What about me? Well, that's a good question. TV watching. Have you seen Preacher?
No. Is it good?
On AMC, based on graphic novels. I think it's crazy good, but I have no idea what's going on.
Okay.
It's not too different from the comic then.
Is it kind of wacky and crazy?
Anything by Garth Ennis is pretty wacky and crazy.
Yeah, right off the bat at the beginning, it shows you various preachers around the world, and you don't know what's up with them, and then something flies into their church and they explode. But right before they explode, they start acting as if they've got God inside them, and they're like, "Yes, I am the chosen," and then they explode, including Tom Cruise, which was my favorite. And that happens on a TV in the background. It's like Tom Cruise at the Scientology Center today exploded. And then they never address it on the show. But every now and then you'll hear news in the background. Like, yes, today Tom Cruise was laid to rest. He exploded the other day. So you don't know what's going on. And then it goes into the main character, who's this sort of dark and mysterious guy who's returned to his hometown in Texas to become a preacher, but you get this idea that he was a really bad guy before he decided to come back, and then it comes and gets into him, and you don't know what it is. Is it God? Is it Satan? And what basically he can tell you to do something, and you do it, and he's like trying to use that power for good, but it keeps twisting. And there's a vampire, of course, because why wouldn't you want a vampire? And there's 2 angels, or are they demons? You don't know. And they both sound like they're from England, which is confusing everybody, which is awesome, because they start telling everybody they're from the government, and then the big tall goopy one will eventually just go, "We're from heaven." And it's like, what government agency are you from? And like everybody's from Texas, so they've got all the thick like Southern accents or Texas accents. I don't want to get any email. It's like, where are you guys from? We're from Washington, and then or where in an English accent, and then the tall guy would just go, "We're from heaven," like heaven. And so it's crazy fun, and I'm enjoying it immensely. I love the acting. I love the characters. I think I'm not supposed to know what's happening. It's not like I don't get it. It's more like I don't think you're supposed to get it. You're supposed to be going like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but it is awesome fun for the summer show. Highly recommend checking it out. You guys still here with me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, last time that happened, my computer had shut down. So anyway, Sci-Fi's 2 big summer hits from last year, Russ, Dark Matter and Killjoys are back.
Already caught up on Killjoys, loving the next season.
I will tell you right now that I am standing by what I said last year, that Dark Matter is a superior show.
Wrong.
It's not wrong. And I'll tell you why. Killjoys has better actors and better writing. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's important.
Dark Matter has 1,000 times better plot.
No.
And in the second season, yeah, absolutely. Killjoys doesn't really have much of a plot.
Don't need it.
Okay, because well, you know what Russ is after in a show. Dark Matter
Acting.
has a really cool,
and
really
writing,
awesome
yes.
plot, and it's being realized in the second season.
Right.
So I'm telling you that Dark Matter, in my opinion, is a superior show. The actors are getting into their stride. They opened the season with a really amazing cliffhanger at the very end. You can tell that they went last year at the end of the year. They went, well, Killjoys is more popular, and we think it's because it's basically Guardians of the Galaxy. So we need to get a little Guardians of the Galaxy in a Dark Matter. So the first 2 episodes of this new season, they're in a galactic prison.
Oh, did they copy the music yet or no?
No.
All right.
No, they did not. But anyway,
Speedy soundtrack.
Killjoys has a crazy soundtrack. Which is fun.
And I'm enjoying Killjoys, but Killjoys again is a thin show. Not a lot going on there, but the characters are cool and the acting's awesome and the writing's still
Killjoys
superior.
Killjoys for me has the same magic that Firefly did. There's no magic for me in Dark Matter, unfortunately.
Well, but
that's my opinion.
you haven't even watched these episodes yet.
No, I ran out of steam in the first season.
Right, exactly. So once again, just like usual, when we dig a little bit, when Russ starts damning something, you find out that he hasn't experienced
4
it all the way
episodes
through.
was enough to tell me I didn't want to.
Oh, see, you didn't even watch to the end of the season.
No, you can't keep me to the end of the season. You're not a good show.
I don't have to listen to your opinion anymore. Okay, moving on. Still reading Terry Pratchett's Discworld books for the Sam Vimes storyline. I just read The Truth. He's a minor character in that. Read The Night Watch, which is awesome. It's like if you have a giant, long, established series, of course, eventually you're going to have to do time travel. So Night Watch is his time travel story, which is awesome.
Night Watch is so good.
It is.
Every time I think about that book, I get like choked up and.
Oh, it's amazing. And that's classic Terry Pratchett. That it's so funny, and at the same time, it can choke you up.
Do you wear the lilac?
I do on May. What is it? 22nd? I forget. But let's see. Right now, I'm reading Monstrous Regiment, which again, he's a minor character, but still fun stuff. Still listening to Brandon Sanderson's Well of Ascension. I've only got an hour left. These giant long books take forever in the summertime. And listeners who made it through to the last episodes, did you ever notice where I was lamenting that I hadn't been able to start writing? I did start writing this week, and in 1 week, I have written almost 40,000 words in the new novel. So that's about 40% of a novel in 7 days. So I'm back in stride. Woohoo!
Nice.
And that's me. Russ, what about you?
All right. Well, real quick. Well, speaking of like funny and emotional and crying, have you guys seen Finding Dory yet?
No.
Not yet.
Oh, man, is that a good movie. That is just good cinema. The fact that it's a kid's movie should be irrelevant. That is a good movie. Like Toy Story 2 level good. I would highly recommend it. Also, still enjoying Quantum Break. I think I talked about the last episode. We already talked about Pokemon Go. Oh, Battlefleet Gothic Leviathan came out for iOS. Now, this is a faithful reproduction of the miniature game. So, turn-based, you got to move half your distance before you can turn 45 degrees, all the dice, all the orders, all the order rolls, brace for impact, ordnance, missiles, 4 factions, everything. If you want to play the miniature game on your phone, Battlefleet Gothic Leviathan is it. $4.99, worth every penny. If you like Battlefleet Gothic, just go buy it now. Also, Norbert mentioned this book, and I didn't realize the sequel was out, so I read The Malcontents, the first book. This is Larry Correia's War Machine book, and it follows the adventures of essentially, it's like a Dirty Dozen story of criminals sort of pressed into service for the Storm Knights.
Oh.
That was the original book, which I finished a while ago. But now Into the Wild is out, which is the next book in the series, where the Malcontents now go on a whole new adventure, where it turns out they're off in the wilds of Signar, and they start bumping heads with the Circle of Ouroboros, and it's good stuff, which I'm really enjoying because my daughter plays Circle, so I think it's going to get her. Craig, if you're looking for some good War Machine fluff, these Larry Correia books. Did you read the first Malcontents book?
No, I haven't read any. But I haven't read any of the War Machine novels. But
Larry
I love
Correia
Larry
is great.
Correia,
Yeah, so I would read Into the Storm first, and then Into the Wild second. They
Cool.
both follow the same people. Both Larry Correia's books, both fantastic.
Nice.
And finally, BattleBots are back, people.
I love BattleBots.
One of my favorite television shows ever because robots killing each other. The new season's even better, even more budget, even more robots, even more preseason. I mean, the premiere episode is 2 hours long, where they went through a lot of the 32 teams. Great stuff, and they've added flying drones now. Did you see this?
What?
Yes. So there's like aerial. You can have, they had the little satellite robots last season, so you can have the big robot and satellite robots, and now you can have satellite. So they basically have flying air drones that shoot flamethrowers down while the robots are fighting down on the ground. A lot more really cool. One of the BattleBots had a hammer that looked very much like a War Machine hammer. The hammer came down and smashed, and then when it smashed, gouts of fire would shoot out of the hammer. And I've actually seen for the first time flamethrowers actually starting to work. I've seen 2 KOs now due to flamethrowers overheating and causing small fires in the enemy robots. So last season they're more decorative. This season they seem to have gotten them down to where like they're welding torch level heat. It's pretty impressive. So if you like BattleBots, and who doesn't, catch the new season. It's on Hulu. People were asking me, I was tweeting about it, like, where did you find it? It's on Hulu. I don't know if that's a Hulu exclusive or not, but you can definitely get them on Hulu. So check that out if you like.
Who's producing? It's not still Comedy Central, is it?
No, the last season was not Comedy Central. It was, I forget, the original season, however many seasons there were several years ago, like 5 years ago or whatever it was Comedy Central.
Right.
But then
when they had Bill Nye.
Yes, but then last year it rebooted, and they had all new commentators and a new season. And then this year it's back with the same commentators. And this year, Adam Savage from MythBusters is one of the judges. You don't see him much; he's just off camera, but he's there once in a while. But yeah, it's really well done. Production values are high this year. It's really cool because the announcers, studio scene is actually behind the battle box, and you see them back there behind the. It's just really well done. Let's check it out. Hulu BattleBots. Don't miss it.
Cool.
Whew. So is that achievements? I think that
is.
I hope so.
Achievements.
So here's the final score. Ripley has 147 victory points. Hicks has 132. I have 117. And Hudson has 87. That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. What the frick are we going to do now? Put the game away.
Time to talk about our friends at BattleFoam.com. And I just love my BattleFoam foam. That's how I got my start with BattleFoam. When they first started out just making foam with their laser cutters. Loved them, got them custom made for Uncharted Seas and many, many of my other great miniature games. Then I got the cases, love those too. And I'm so impressed every time I go to their website and seeing all the new hotness there now. I'm trying to desperately resist buying the new Imperial White Battle Foam cases. They look awesome for just a great look for any of your games, particularly for those Star Wars fans out there. Great looking bag with the mollies on the side, so you can attach little accessories to the outside of your bag. Good size for any size foam. They also just carry everything you need really to store anything now, pretty much. Amazing bags. Bags they can be run over by a car. The hardcore stuff for checking them in an airline. Bags that can be affordable. Bags somewhere in the middle, and even these great now they've got Benson box accessories that are basically little token organizers. I like to use those too in my board game organization. They're fantastic, and these things will go right inside. You can buy them separately or buy them fit into foam, fit right in your case so you can organize your entire board games. Some of those board games now are so complex, there's so many parts, you can't get them back in the box, especially with all the expansions. Battle Foam to the rescue there as well. They have everything you need to organize and protect just about anything. Head on over to battlefoam.com and check all their great stuff.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland? I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap...
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, of course, I got to talk about Pokemon Go. I mean, really, who isn't after all? It has taken our family by storm, well, most of my family by storm. My wife, Nicole, and I are both really enjoying it, and our youngest daughter, Kit, who is 12, also very much enjoying it. Our oldest daughter, Rose, who's 14, is only mildly amused by it and is not as obsessed by it as the rest of us, so she just kind of dabbles. But the rest of us are pretty addicted, and... I've been really trying to figure out how the game works because, quite frankly, it's a little confusing when it comes to gym battles for me. So I was doing some research today, and I figured a few things out, and I thought I'd share them. You guys probably already know this. First of all, I am a Pokemon neophyte. I'm very much a noob, so I don't even know, like, my youngest daughter's always teasing me. I call them the wrong thing. I'm like, look, I got a fire guy. She's like, that's a Magmar, Dad. I'm like, what? So I don't know the names of any of these guys. I call them little cat creature. Oh, look, one shaped like a cat. Oh, look, a ghost dude. I don't know the names of them at all, A. So B, I don't even know their attack types. I mean, fire is obvious. The water rides are pretty clear. How do you tell a grass guy from, psychic? I don't even know. But in any case, that is good, handy things to know because when you fight in a gym, there's more to it than just tapping the gym and start tapping on the screen and hoping you kill the other Pokemon. I mean, if you do that, you will win occasionally, but you'll also come to the conclusion that unless your Pokemon has a combat value higher than the guy in the gym, you can't win. And that's actually not the case. So we've been doing a little research, and there's a little more tactics. So what you can do is, first of all, obviously try to match your Pokemon up to the guy you're fighting from the opposite style. So if you're fighting fire, you want water, that kind of thing, obviously. But the second thing is you want to use your power attacks, and you want to make sure you dodge. So if you swipe left and right on the screen, your Pokemon will dodge their attacks, which is really important. And also, if you watch the power-up bar below your health bar, when that gets to enough pips to activate your Pokemon's secondary power, and you can tell how many pips it takes if you look at your Pokemon's details and look at the little bars under one of his secondary power there, you can tap and hold, and your Pokemon will launch his secondary power, which is a lot more damage, and it's particularly good because usually these secondary powers are different attack types, which do even better against the appropriate kind of Pokemon. The other thing we just figured out is how to capture gyms and how to level up gyms. So, you'll notice that gyms can get to be different levels, and you can have different numbers of Pokemon in there, which is sort of interesting. And, of course, to defeat the gym entirely, you got to knock all the Pokemon out of the gym. To do that, you got to make a complete run against the gym once. So you got to beat all the Pokemon in the gym. And when you do that, it knocks one Pokemon out of their gym. So if the red team, for example, is holding a gym and they got 3 guys in there and you're the blue team, you can start attacking them. And if you beat all 3 of their guys, one of them pops out and goes down from a level 3 gym to a level 2 gym, and now only 2 Pokemon can be in there. If you can defeat the gym again, you'll knock them down to level 1, and only 1 Pokemon will be in there. If you can defeat the gym again, then the gym will be empty, and you can put your own Pokemon in there and claim it for your team. Now, one of the things we couldn't figure out was how do you level up your own gym? And you do that by, after your first player puts a Pokemon in the gym, he or she can't do anything else to that gym. He's got one guy in there, he's done. The gym's level 1, you got 1 Pokemon in there. Won't hold out for long that way. But then if I come along and I start to train, which is basically battle against a gym that's owned by my own team, my Pokemon gets experience, but more importantly, the gym levels up. And when the gym levels up to enough of these battles, it goes to level 2, which means a second Pokemon can be put in there. And then you can put one of your own Pokemon in there. Another little trick is you can't have more than one Pokemon from the same player. So you need another player from your team to add their Pokemon in there to level up the gym. And then you need yet another player to add their Pokemon to level the gym up even more. And that's how you make the gym strong and really hard to get. So, whew, it's actually a little more tricky than I thought. We're having a great time with this game, just catching the Pokemon and trying to figure out how to hold the gym thing. It's not the most complex app ever, not the most complicated game ever, but hey, it gets us geeks out of the house in a little bit of the sun, get a little bit of exercise, and, we're obsessed about catching things, so why not catch them all? Anyway, that's what we're playing right now, and hopefully I'll have more information to you in the next app of the app.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App, a segment in which,
Hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show.
seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back. And since we have Sam on the show, and Sam, as a longtime follower of you on Facebook, I've noticed you are really engaged in the community and with youth groups. And I see what I think is fascinating about that is you're always putting up pictures of the things you're doing with your friends and with the kids, but you're engaging with games a lot. And I really wanted to take this opportunity while you're on the show here to talk about how do you do that? How do you get a group of kids really into gaming, and how do you bring that to the youth group in general?
It's a very good question. So I wouldn't say it was a job requirement, but it was almost a perk of hiring when they got me that my game collection came along with it.
Really? So did they know? They were like, Sam, so kind of explain how you got involved with these
Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about everything that Russ just said he already knew?
Sure.
The rest of us don't. Who are you? Where do you come from? And what are you doing that you have such a game collection?
So I'm actually the head advisor for a Jewish youth group.
There's one now.
And there's the youth now.
That's one of my youths. So we run two separate youth groups. We run one called JSU, which is a series of public high school Jewish culture clubs. There's less gaming involved there, although sometimes I will use them as an icebreaker and educational activity. And then I also run a youth group called NCSY, which is a Jewish youth group. It's under Orthodox auspices. Mm-hmm. So what a lot of people don't know is that observant Jews, Orthodox Jews, on the Sabbath from Friday night to Saturday night, we don't use any sort of electronics, no phones, no driving in cars, no nothing. And so it creates this really rich environment for personal interaction in general. Mm-hmm. But for decades, Orthodox Jews on Shabbos have been playing board games. Most of the kids that I deal with will generally have thought of Monopoly as a fine thing to do on a Saturday afternoon. Mm-hmm. So it's always been my goal as a gamer to try and introduce them to something maybe a little more, I don't want to say worth their time, but enjoyable with that time.
More engaging. That's really cool. I did not know that. I feel very ignorant now. So has this been something that is just sort of a known thing amongst your community that, we play games on Saturday, but generally it's the sort of the classics, if you will, the classic family?
So, I mean, you'll hear people talking about, Scrabble or Bananagrams or Rummy Cube. Those classics have been played for a long time. Mm-hmm. Amongst the younger set who are sort of more tuned into the modern board game scene anyway, mm-hmm. Or at least that generation is, you're starting to see more people who on the Sabbath by the way, if I say the word Shabbos, that's what I mean. That's our word for the Sabbath. Okay. So on Shabbos, you'll see more people playing Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride. And I had a rabbi ask me the other day if I'd ever heard of this game, Railways of the World. Mm-hmm. That became a much more common thing. People realized that, this is a great way if you're going to pass a really long summer afternoon, mm-hmm. long time till sundown. It's a great thing to do. And I took it upon myself as someone who knew more about modern games to try and introduce those to the community. So with my youth group kids, they'll come over and they know now it's a known thing. Kids will come to my house on Saturdays, mm-hmm. and I'll break out games and show them what's what and just try and generate a good time.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Very cool. So, and how did you get involved specifically with your other youth group? Did they just reach out to you? Was it because they knew you were a gamer and they're like, "Ooh, let's get Sam involved because he has all the games"?
I actually was, at the time I first got involved with them. I actually became religious later in life. But at the time that I did, I was living in Indianapolis, where I lived for quite a few years. And I was actually working for a college fraternity. I was a member of in college. I was working at the national office in Indianapolis. And the synagogue where I went, they approached me. The person who had been their youth group advisor was moving back to Israel, and they just didn't have anyone. So they thought, since I worked with college kids, high school kids were not such a stretch. So maybe I would give that a try. I started as a volunteer. It became a part-time job, and then it turned into a full-time job. And then I wound up moving out to St. Louis doing the same work.
Oh, very cool. Did I'm just, now you got me really curious about this. So did gaming help you become closer to your religion, or did your religion help you become closer to gaming, or is it sort of something that two things just sort of merged to become sort of one?
That's a really good question. So there are aspects of gaming that have become harder because of my religion. For instance, because of the rules of Shabbos, going to cons on a weekend is a much more difficult thing than it would be.
Yeah, I thought about that. You're right.
I used to go to cons all the time. I was at Gen Con every year for a long time. We still, if we can, go to Gen Con. Usually we'll just skip Saturday and stay in the community in Indianapolis.
Right.
But so that's tricky. Timing can get difficult. But because of Shabbos, we sort of gained this built-in family time, built-in face-to-face human time.
Yeah.
Where we don't use phones, we're not on the internet, we're not moving around, we're at home spending time, and this is a great way to bond. And so that became a really, for us at least, and not every Orthodox Jew would say this is the most appropriate use of your time, but for us it became a really integral part of Shabbos, is trying to get in some games.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of sacrilegious to say, but it just feels like you have a built-in gaming day there.
So I mentioned this on Board Game Geek at one point and described the kind of day we have, and someone said, like, "Oh my God, I wish I had that in my life." But there's other aspects to it that are interesting because we don't use electronics. There are certain games that, because I almost do all of my gaming on Shabbos, we never get to play.
Right.
So I was very interested in trying XCOM, but because of the electronic component, it's a no-go for us. Stuff like, Telestrations, which would be a great game for my youth group normally, doesn't actually work for us because we can't write on Shabbos.
Oh, wow. Well, I didn't know about that rule. Really interesting. So now, is there other well, see, I'm just going to totally ignore our show notes here. Is there other this is really fascinating, Sam. What a great topic. So are there other I suppose there's lots of other aspects of this, and if we want to extend this to other kind of youth groups, I'm sure that there's other rules that come into play, but I'm really curious about this particular case. What kind of other things do you have to avoid? Other religions, I'm sure have more, depending on your faith and the categories of it, but like some people are averse to gambling in any form of dice, right? Or that kind of thing. Are there other things? Like I would imagine, cash and guns might be inappropriate, or is it not? I don't know.
So we actually play a lot of cash and guns.
Really? See, shattering stereotypes right here.
Yeah, we play a lot of cash and guns. The kids really dig it. I've actually gotten rabbinic approval on that game.
That's awesome.
But within the gaming realm, there are a few things that come into play in particular. One is no writing. Two is no electronics. Those are the big ones.
Yep.
A third one, which is interesting, is that if you would normally keep score in that game by writing, by pen and paper, something like Quirkle, for instance, we play with a pen and paper always. Right. You're not really supposed to do that, even if you keep score by other means.
Right, like using tokens to count victory points. Is that legal?
Right, but because modern board games so frequently have a score track built in, this becomes a much less frequent problem, and I always point that out to game companies, like, thank you for including this score track because it actually helps us a lot. Those are sort of the big restrictions with regards to gaming. Some of the themes are more or less appropriate. Cash and Guns, especially the second edition, which is really cartoony, is not really such a problem. A game like Ra, the Egyptian gods maybe doesn't fly so well.
Oh yeah, right.
Some of the themes with maybe some more scantily clad women don't necessarily fly in the youth group so well. Right. But for the most part, mechanically, that's not such a problem. Although with Cash and Guns, we don't play because of Shabbos. We don't play the way we really want to that often. Mm-hmm. We discovered the best way to play Cash and Guns is actually if you're in a small room and someone is over by the light switch. And you actually shut out the lights when everyone points their guns and turn them back on to see where everyone's pointing. So we can't do that, which is the best way to play Cash and Guns, but we do still play Cash and Guns.
That's I've never tried the light switch game. Now you've got me wanting to try to play that. So interesting. That's really fascinating. So well, that's really cool. I'm just absorbing all that. That's really amazing. So I think that I'm still blown away by Cash and Guns being totally legit. See, now I've got all kinds of new ideas, but I'm also blown away that now is it drawing or writing or any kind of putting pen to paper or pencil to paper?
Yeah, putting pen to paper actually to really delve into the laws of Shabbos is a much bigger topic than
it's 5
one
episodes.
podcast. But even if something were written, even erasing so that you could use it again would be a problem. Building any sort of permanent structure. Yeah. Or completing something. So sometimes if you have a game, for instance, that's not put together before Shabbos, and you would need to permanently build something, not like if you put, stack something on the board because that's just the way that it goes, that's not such a problem. But if you had to assemble something that was intended to stay that way, that could be a problem.
So you can't really do like my favorite thing, which is design box control on Saturday, right? Because by permanently putting in sections in your box and maybe getting the plano figured out and poking out all the pieces and sorting them, that would be inappropriate.
That would be a problem, yes.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, sometimes if I have time, I'll actually remember to do that on Friday afternoon before sundown.
Right. So
that I'll be able to play a new game.
But I do that anyway. Just it's not for as glorious a reason. I simply go Monday night. I get all my stuff ready so that Tuesday when I play, I'm all good to go. Well, that's really fascinating. So interesting. So and the community as a whole has been very accepting of this. It's actually something they're. Why do you think they're enjoying bringing games? Is it because it's engaging more kids and they're more compelled to follow the laws of Sabbath, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, I mean, we've got that's part of it. I think we've got in my youth group we've got kids that are both observant and unobservant. We've got all stripes, but they know at my house on Shabbos that's like what we do. That's our primary sort of Saturday afternoon entertainment. Not everyone, depending on their level of observance, thinks that's the way you should really spend your time. But a lot of people get that kids are kids and they're going to be bored. And if they're going to be engaged in a board game and thus following the rules as opposed to sitting down and playing Grand Theft Auto, that's a good outcome for someone. I think board games in general are thought of a fairly wholesome, family friendly activity. And especially in the family game realm, they're just a great thing to get the family around the table doing on a Saturday afternoon. And everyone likes games at their core, I think. And for Orthodox Jews, we've got this built-in period of time when we're tuned out from the really fast-paced, rapid-fire aspects of society, and we get to slow down a little bit. And board games are a very nice, slowed down, chilled out kind of entertainment. And I think people latched onto that.
Oh, that's really neat.
Cool.
So great. So the community. So you've got it going on with your youth groups, and people are really engaged and enjoying them. So let's talk a little bit about some of the games you've had good luck with, and
sure.
But also, what are some of the games that you thought would do well and didn't for a variety of reasons? I'm really curious to know. If you ran into problems with something, I just think it's fascinating that Cash and Guns is like totally legit. but what are some of the games? I know you mentioned a couple of them. Like I'm curious, like do you have to keep any games that reference other faiths, even if they're historic, out? Like High Heavens has Norse gods fighting Egyptian gods fighting Greek gods. Would that be inappropriate?
Sure. So I mean, I've got all sorts of games that that's not such a problem. I have Seven Wonders, for instance. Yeah. Which goes in. There's a Colossus of Rhodes and Civilization. I have those types of things. It's really not a problem. We generally don't run into that kind of thing. Something like High Heavens, I haven't really looked at it to see whether it would be an issue. More often, there are games I just think will fly, and they just fall a little flat, and people get bored a little bit. I've in doing this for a while, I've hit on 3 rules. I call them my perfect trifecta of party games.
Oh, cool.
This would be relevant to party games outside of youth groups, but
yeah, right. I'm taking notes.
Right. What I've noticed work sort of as 3 things to look for. Not to say that a game has to have these 3 things to be good, or that they excuse a game not being fun. But these are kind of like the platonic ideal that I've found of party games that I've found work really well. So this is what I look for. Number 1, the rules need to be not necessarily simple in and of themselves, but they need to be really, really, really fast to explain. Primarily with teenagers, people really don't have the patience to sit there and listen to rules. Ideally, the rules should be almost self-evident from just watching the game played.
Right.
So something like Spot It, for instance, where people are just slapping down cards and someone says, how do you play? So you say the match. Okay, I'm in. That's it.
Right.
That, you get people in right away and they're going. No one's going to get bored and wander off from the table. Occasionally, if you've got a reason that people are really into a theme and they want to get into a heavier game, you can get them through a heavy rules explanation. I have a bunch of kids recently who are obsessed with Hamilton, and so I got them to sit down and listen to an explanation and jump in and play Founding Fathers.
Oh, awesome. I was going to ask
nice.
about that. Great.
Yeah, but that's not common. So number 1 is that the game needs to be really simple to explain. 60 seconds tops. Cash and Guns, you can get through the basics in 60 seconds.
Right.
That's a good example, too. Number 2 is it should be playable by a theoretically, if not functionally, unlimited number of players. So, I mean, something like Word on the Street, which it says, 4 to 10 players on the box. It's not really 10 players. There's teams, and you could just stick as many people on a team as you wanted.
Right.
You might not be able to fit that many people around the table, but in theory, you could just get any number of people in there.
It's like
Because there's
charades,
nothing worse than when you've got a group of kids around and you just start a game and someone else walks in the door and says, hey, what are you guys doing? And you say, oh, we're playing this game that we don't have room for you to sit in on now.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the third point, is that ideally a game should be able to have players jump in and out without affecting the game state. So something like, for instance, not Cash and Guns, but something like Word on the Street or Codenames, someone can just walk up, see what you're doing, say, hey, can I play? And you say, yeah, you're playing right now. Just join that team and you're in. No problem.
Yeah.
And then if someone decides they have to get up and use the bathroom and get a snack or something like that, the game doesn't fall to a screeching halt because one person gets up from the table. So those are the 3 things that I try and look for. I think games that hit all 3 of or check all 3 of those boxes tend to be successful in these types of settings. Just because something doesn't check these boxes doesn't mean it can't be. In my experience, the second best party game of all time doesn't hit any of them, which is Time's Up Title Recall.
Right.
But it has to be really, really fun to excuse that.
Well, yeah, and that's a great example, actually. I've seen, I know there's a box version of that, but I think many of us have played that version just with some homemade pencils and papers and a hat.
Sure.
And that works really well. Those are actually, well, I'm really thinking about those, and I think you're right about that. I think that expands, as you said, that's really for anybody who's trying to just grab. I mean, if you can get a game that does those 3 things, pretty much anybody will play it with you at least a round or 2, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, but I'm curious. Do you ever, before we get into these good examples of these, because this is really some tough criteria for a lot of games to meet, and be compelling games too, right? I think the other thing is you want people to lead, and it goes without saying, obviously, but you want people to have fun so much so they're like, let's play it again. And a classic example of this, I think everybody knows about, is Werewolf, which really pretty much falls into these groups, and everybody loves it to the point where you see them playing it all night at Gen Con. So it's kind of people come back to it over and over again.
Right.
But do you ever find in your youth groups that you mentioned sometimes, you have a couple people who are really passionate about one particular theme and might be willing to sit through a longer game explanation? Do you find that the people coming to your group are always shifting, or do you get enough repeat players once in a while where they might be like, you know what, we'd like to, since we've got all Saturday afternoon, instead of playing 4 different games, could we just play one massive long game?
So I've almost always got kids who would love nothing more than to sit down and play Civilization, for instance.
Right.
It's a matter of, let's say even if we have a 4-hour stretch on a Saturday afternoon, by the time I set up the game, teach the game, and get them going through maybe 1 or 2 turns, you're 1 or 2 turns in and your 4 hours, are gone.
Yeah, blew by. Right.
So as much as I would love to get that done more often, it's just very difficult. So some of these criteria that I came up with are more for my ease as someone running a game day.
Yeah.
To just get people down and playing with stuff.
Right.
Certain circumstances do work out. Someone came to me and said, I really want to play Founding Fathers, that game you told me about. I said, okay, so let me get these other people off here playing One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I got 10 people in there. They're going to take care of themselves for the next half hour. Right. So I can get you guys set up to play Founding Fathers or Sheriff of Nottingham, for instance, and then they'll go and do that for another 2 hours, and it's no problem. It's just functionally difficult with my role to get that done as often as kids would even like.
Yeah. Cool. So, and just to get everybody a good idea, how big typically is a group of kids you're dealing with on a Saturday afternoon?
Anywhere from 10 to 30.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you don't really know what you're going to get. It's totally random. Sometimes you get the same kids every week.
So it depends. For instance, over some of the Jewish holidays, which are treated like a Shabbos with the same rules, but they last 3 days. For instance, we had one a few weeks ago called Shavuot, and so we flew in college students from New York that are other advisors that our kids are friendly with, and they stayed here for the whole holiday. So at the end of a 3-day holiday like that, where kids are super bored out of their minds and are really looking for something to do, I had probably 25 kids here for 5 or 6 hours that last day. And those are really good opportunities to get all sorts of stuff played. But it really, it could be 5 kids swing by and they just, want to break something out. And it could be, it's a big day like that where we really get almost everyone from the community coming out for it.
Oh, cool. And one last question before we dive into some of the game examples. Do you have a lot of adults participate? Do some adults ever watch this and go, that looks like a lot of fun. I like to play with the kids.
Usually I deal with high school students primarily. So I almost never have adults come over. Usually the kids come over on their own. I will have some other of the college age kids are always participating. My wife is a big gamer as well. So as long as, the kids will allow, she'll jump in, right in with everybody and play. When I have broken some of these out at we have like weekend retreats where we'll go away and meet other kids from other cities in the region. And I've actually gotten, rabbis from other cities to jump in and play stuff with me. And I think the adults are just as intrigued if they can allow themselves to admit that adults play games.
Fair enough. Very cool. Well, Sam, I think we need to dive in now in and discover a few good game examples you've discovered, because now, given that criteria, I mean, a lot of my, and then of course there's if someone else has got a gaming group that maybe doesn't have the same restrictions that yours does based on your faith, that might open up a few more here that would still fall into your 3 categories. So I'll throw some examples in there, but you've got the added restriction. I mean, you've got a really sort of tough group to satisfy, which is your 3 rules, which I really love for party game rules, by the way. And then the second part of that is it can't really involve any kind of writing or record keeping, essentially, right?
Which is a lot of party games.
Which is like a lot. Yeah, right. I mean, even, I'm trying like a lot of party games. So what have you found so far that work within your 3 rules plus the additional rules of your religion?
Sure. So a lot of games that people will describe as more of an activity than a game work well in these circumstances, actually. So you guys play the game Concept?
Yes. I don't think Craig has, though. Why don't you go ahead and describe it briefly?
I have not.
So Concept is like nerd charades for introverts. It's a board with all sorts of like symbols. Symbol for fictional character, symbol for big, symbol for man, woman, hot, cold, etc. And so you're using cubes on those symbols to try and indicate a word that you're trying to get across. And it ticks all three of those boxes. You can just walk up and look at what's going on and, I know how to play, and you guess what it is, and you're playing, and that's it. That's phenomenal. It's worked very, very well. And it's got another one of those, one more time kind of things. People just keep going. Spot It works very well. Super simple. You're just matching cards, and someone walks up and says, "What are you doing?" "We're matching cards." And you say the match, and you're in right then and there. Works very well. One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which doesn't tick the box of allowing people to jump in and out. The rounds are usually quick enough that people can sit back and watch one, learn how to play through that round, and then jump in the next one.
Now, why do you prefer One Night over traditional Ultimate Werewolf?
One is there's no player elimination. Once the round's over, you're done. Right. And there's no, being forced to sit there for some of those large werewolf games you can be sitting for 45 minutes or an hour before you get in the next game.
Right.
And at a place at Gen Con, when you've got 30 games going, you just go find another game. There's always one starting. But when there's 10 kids in the room, well, that's tricky to make work.
Fair.
That's one reason. Two, I prefer that there's more to go on. And as much as people say like, oh, well, we're going to, it's too obvious now. No, it's not. You just have to lie better. And I like that. We have to play without the app. Usually on Shabbos, we don't have the access to the app.
Right.
But someone will narrate, and it works just fine.
So you don't get to hear Eric Summer's sultry tones there.
We do not have the dulcet tones of Eric Summer.
That's too bad.
But that's another great one. The kids love that. Social deduction games in general go very well. I would love to do the Resistance, but it takes a little bit longer to get people into than Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Werewolf. The Looney Labs game Lunacy, which is very similar to Spot It in a lot of ways. You can explain it in 10 seconds and you're off and running. It's a great just one more time kind of game. And probably the number one game that we've gone to over the last year since it came out. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best party game ever made, and it's the perfect game for these settings. Is Codenames?
Yeah,
it ticks every box. It is as close to a perfect party game as I think someone possibly could have designed.
Codenames is amazing, and we're going to talk about it later this episode, give it a full review. So we won't too many more spoilers in that one, but Codenames is fantastic. And Craig, you got to play this game. It's awesome. Awesome, cool. Any others? Because I have a bunch of ideas flowing through my head now as you talk to me here.
The only other one that kids call for a lot is Dancing Eggs.
Ooh, I'm not sure I've played Dancing Eggs. How does that work?
So Dancing Eggs is a carton of rubber eggs and 2 dice. And on your turn, you roll a die, which tells you how you acquire an egg. That may be racing around the table to be the first person back at your spot.
Yeah.
Maybe you bounce one of the rubber eggs and the first person to grab it gets it. Maybe the first person to grab the die gets the egg, or the first person to yell cock-a-doodle-doo gets the egg.
Right.
But after you get an egg, you roll another die to tell you where you have to put the egg, either in your armpit, in the crook of your arm, under your chin, or between your knees. And the game ends when someone drops an egg. So it gets ridiculous very, very quickly. And it was designed as a kid's game, but the teenagers love it, and it is as fun to watch as it is to play, which is another great thing for a game to have.
That's awesome. Well, that's fantastic. That's a really. I want to try Dancing Eggs. I think my kids would like that one too. Cool. Well, Craig, do you want? I've got a few suggestions.
Yeah, I think we should go through ours, and Sam can rate and give his thoughts on ours, and then we can wrap it up with his professional list.
Yes. Okay. All right. Cool. So you want me to start, Craig, or you want to go back and forth?
No, we can go. Let's go back and forth. But I'll start with. My game playing time with my students is obviously limited to very specific times when the majority of the students are elsewhere. So I'm not usually dealing with a large group of kids. I'm usually dealing with less than 10 if I'm able to fit a game in, unless it's theater and we're doing werewolf. And the one of the most common successes I've had is with Martian Dice Zombie Dice, which hit several of your little points. Very easy to explain either of them. Martian Dice is a little harder to explain, although they think it's harder than it really is till they see somebody go around once. playable by unlimited number of people, and you can jump in and out as you want because people generally, it's more like you're just having fun trying to beat the number that's the highest at the moment as it goes around the table.
I've never played Martian Dice, but Zombie Dice is a great one.
Yeah, and Martian Dice is slightly more complicated, but same basic idea of pushing your luck. So I would generally, like, I carry that with me wherever I go because it's such a tiny little box that I can fit the dice in. But that is always, if there's like 15 minutes or so, my students, once I've done it once, will always be like, "Hey, can we just do that dice game with the Martians and the cows?" So I would put that in as probably my go-to, even though it's not at all sophisticated or in any way have intellectual value whatsoever.
I'm looking at Sam's list here. I don't see intellectual value as one of the 3 bullets.
Yeah, that's not.
That's true. That's true. See, there you go.
Right.
Okay, Russ, what about you?
Well, I have 2 that won't work for Sam's group, but I think will work for others if you're not restricted to drawing. Because obviously that's a big deal. But we already mentioned telestrations. I think telestrations is a little tricky because it does have a limit of I think it's 8 because in the base game there's
12 with the big one.
But 12 with the big one. Plus, all it really takes is a notepad. So if you have notepads and some pencils, you can play as many people as you have notepads and pencils. But for those who haven't played this before, and if you're looking for, I think this is this game has been a hit every time I've done it, and you really don't even need the box. Honestly, this is one of those games that are kind of like charades where all you need is a drawing board and a piece of paper. So all you really need is a few notepads and a paper. And on the first paper, you give everybody the pad and you say, write a short sentence. And then you pass your pads to the left. And then you say on the next page, now draw the picture of the short sentence. And then you pass the page to the left. And you say, everybody now write the sentence for the picture that was just drawn, but you don't look back at the first sentence. So you don't really know. And what ends up happening is the game of telephone, but with pictures, where you get wacky fun ensues. And by the time you're done to the last picture, it bears no resemblance whatsoever to the initial sentence that someone drew. And this is always a huge hit. So if you're in a situation where you're dealing with a similar situation to what Sam's discussing, except you're not limited to drawing, that game is fantastic. And Pictomania is similar, but a really neat twist on the mechanic. But it does involve drawing as well. So both those games, I think, are really fantastic for that. But I do acknowledge it won't work for you, Sam.
I should point out there are times that we play where it's not Shabbos.
No, there you go.
It's just not as common.
Right.
And those are both excellent choices for those times.
But I do have, Craig, I'm going to slip one more in here. So I do have one that I think Sam, your group will like, and it's called Dead Last. And and now that I know Cash and Guns is legit, I think the theme here is fine. So this is a brand new game from Smirk and Dagger. And it is limited by components, but it handles up to 12. So it handles a pretty good sized group of people.
Pretty good.
And it is playing very fast, and it's super easy to explain, and it's so simple, it's not even, I couldn't even imagine reviewing it, so I'm just going to tell you the rules right now. So
sure.
Before you start timing me on 60 seconds, though, I'm going to describe the components, so don't start the clock yet.
Okay.
I have a minute to explain the rules right before, under your rules.
Go for it.
Yes, I think we should do that.
But wait, but not yet. So what comes in the box is a nice little box control thing there, and a bunch of little decks of cards that are designed one deck for each player. And essentially, each player is going to get a card with a little stand, and the card's going to stand in front of them, and it's a fun little artwork of basically a gang member. So purple girl with sword, green guy with shotgun, blue guy with, pistol, that kind of thing. And then in your hand of cards, you have a card that matches one of the colors of all the other players at the table. So if you have 12 players with 12 different colors, I'll have a hand of cards with the 12 different colors in that hand. So that's the components. Here's how you play. In a round, we are all going to put a card face down in front of ourselves representing the color of the person we think we should kill. All right? The deal is, though, that you want to come to a consensus of who you should kill, kind of like Werewolf. But here's the rub. So whoever gets the most votes to be killed, so after you give everybody like a minute, 30 seconds, the game recommends 60 seconds. So you time it for 60 seconds, go ahead, everybody discuss who's going to die. Okay, fine. You flip the cards over. If the red player got the most votes, the red player is dead and out. Now, it does a player elimination, but you're not up very long. Red is out. But here's the rub. Anybody who didn't vote for red...
the second rub.
There's many rubs. After everybody's voted, if you didn't vote for the player who got for the most votes, if you didn't vote for red, you are also out. So the only people left are the majority group who determined who should die. But here's the other little nuance. if everybody says, hey, let's vote for red, all in favor, aye, the whole table's like, yeah, kill red. Red, you have an additional card in your hand. In addition to all the other colors at the table, you have a color that represents yourself that says ambush.
Oh, so close.
Oh, well, I'm almost done. So you flip over the ambush. If you put the ambush card instead of voting for someone else, and you are the person who was killed, then instead of you dying, you get to pick someone else who voted for you to die.
Oh, wow.
But if you play an ambush and you're not the person who gets voted the most, you are out also. So basically, no one can know who you're voting for. And then you play again and again until there's like 1 or 2 players left. And then they divide a small pool of tokens in the middle of the table, much like Cash and Guns. And then, just like Cash and Guns, everybody died real quick. You reset and you play again. Everybody stands up and you do another round. And the person with the most money, which is basically little tokens from the middle of the table at the end of the game, wins.
I love everything about that.
I know, right? It's kind of like Cash and Guns meets Werewolf. It's sort of a really interesting game. Very fast, super easy to teach, and 12 players out of the box. You can't go wrong. And it's really fun to see the social dynamics. We had one round where the left side of the table started voting for the right side of the table. And so one round, they took out one of theirs. The next round, they took out one of ours. It was like whack, 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 until finally the whole thing broke down. Everybody started killing each other. It was a good time. So Dead Last, I highly recommend. That's a brand new hotness. Cool. I'm glad that sounds good. Kurt will be happy to see someone else buy that.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
So, Craig, what else is on your list there for Sam to try?
Well, we've already talked about Werewolf, and we'd already talked about the Resistance, although the Resistance is a big hit with my older students. Mm-hmm. Relatively easy to explain. We've talked about it a lot on the show. Kind of a sci-fi werewolf, limited to 10 players, so it doesn't really hit that sweet spot beyond 10 players. Can't really jump in and out, but it's a relatively quick game, so you're talking, 15 to 20 minutes, and then you're going to be playing a new game. And they love it. They love the idea of the trader mechanic and all that stuff going on there. I see, Russ, that you included Bang the Dice Game, as did I myself, although I do have to be a little careful with Bang the Dice Game and having kids in a school yell out things like, I shoot him, and things like that. Or I use 2 beers. So we do things like I target him, which is still a little sketchy. And we call it medicine.
So, Sam, do you think Bang the Dice Game would work?
I have not played Bang the Dice Game.
Ooh.
I have played Bang. Bang always wound up being a little slow for me.
That's the problem with Bang.
So Bang the Dice Game fixes everything that's wrong with Bang.
Then it sounds like it would work.
Yes, because I think everybody who's played Bang initially falls in love with it, and then after 2 or 3 plays is like, it's kind of about staying its welcome, and there's a few fiddly things that can happen. Bang the Dice Game totally fixes that and is a lot of fun. And while there is sort of teams and everything, you can you can play real quickly with rounds. So you might want to give that a try. But
I will. Thank you.
It does have some adult themes like alcohol consumption and shooting guns. So just FYI. I've got one that I think fits the bill too, and this came to my head as you were describing some of your games. Are you familiar with the card game Once Upon a Time?
The storytelling game.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this might, I don't know if you tried it in this setting, but it might work. It's kind of a meta game, but the idea behind this game is it's basically it comes in a little box, and it's a deck of cards with really nice artwork on it, and there's all kinds of different things in the decks of cards. So there's places, there's people, and there's things, right? So you'll have a card that says a castle, and there'll be another card that says the mountains, another card says the giant, another card says, Little Red Riding Hood, all these different things, right? The prince, the princess, the mother. And the idea is you have this hand of cards, you deal the hand of cards to everyone, and you have to start telling a story. And as you tell a story, what you're trying to weave in is one of the cards in your hand. So you might say, you have the prince card in your hand, you might say, the prince started walking down, you put the prince down, a road, you might have a road. And then you say, at the end of the road, he spies a castle, and you put a castle down, right? But as you're doing this, other players, if you happen to say a word that you don't have in your hand, but you are trying to get yourself to a story part where you can play another card. So if I was, for example, didn't have a road, and I might say, the prince, and play the prince card, is walking down a road to that I'm trying to get to castle, because I have a castle card. But as soon as I say road, Craig goes, I have road. Now the play passes to Craig, and he can start trying to extend the story. He's got to continue the story, by the way. Extend the story to the next thing, and if you get stuck or can't say anything else, you have to draw another card. That's basically it. There's a few more rules, but that's basically the whole game. And it's pretty neat. People can jump in and out. There's no real player limit except how many cards you have. And it's a really simple game, but people really dig it because you're basically being creative and telling a story while you play.
I love Once Upon a Time. The only trouble that I've had with it is sometimes you get a kid who's a little bit shy.
Yeah,
and they may want to jump in and play, and they're sitting there like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that.
But beyond that, I think if you get the right group, it's a perfect game for this setting.
Cool. Well, you got any more there, Craig?
Well, they kind of go a little bit. Well, there's two. I have two left. One really doesn't kind of fit, mainly because of the tiny epic games when my group is smaller, like 6 or less. Those can be really good, and actually, you can kind of theme them to. Usually, I use them with my advisory when we're having some kind of theme, like leadership or something like that. But they're a little more complicated to explain. They're limited to 5 or 6 players, and you're locked in once you started playing. Preference for myself would be Tiny Epic Kingdoms because it plays faster and it's easier to explain than the others. But they're a hit with the kids who aren't generally gamers, but are open-minded enough to give it a shot, and not so complicated that you lose the kids, but complicated enough that those kids who want a little more to dig their teeth into can do that. But again, like I said, only with a small group. And then my actual ultimate go-to game is what I call 3-round charades, which is basically Time's Up Title Recall before I ever even knew Time's Up Title Recall ever even was a thing. And longtime listeners will remember how angry I was that Time's Up Title Recall was even a game that you would pay money for, because it's always been a party game to me that you just play. But the concept of that, like easing your way into a full round of charades, 3-round charades, you start with, you can talk as much as you want, you just can't say the words on the actual slip of paper. And it works in my classes. In theater class, it can be almost anything. In English class, it's a great tool for reviewing novels and when you're doing a Dickens novel and there's 30 characters, there's your 30 names right there. And it's you go through one round where you split them up into teams, and then each team has 1 minute to do as many as they can. You go through until all the names are done, and then you go to the next round. Round 1, you can talk as much as you want. Round 2, you can only say one word. And then round 3 is straight up charades. So it kind of eases them in for those kids that might be either didn't pay any attention to the reading whatsoever, or might be a little shy. But it's a lot of fun, gets them up and moving around, and really kind of fits in all of the 3 criteria that Sam wrote down.
See, I would disagree. I would actually say that while it doesn't tick those 3 boxes, it supersedes them. It's so good that it's worth playing even with it. You can't jump in and out for the most. Once you're in, you're in. And if you drop out, could mess it up for other players because the number of cards gets messed up. Okay. You can't really have so many people, and I find it takes people a little longer to grok than most games.
Okay, well let me defend my position then.
Okay, that's fine.
It's a debate.
Because as I go, I've got a coffee can full of slips of paper, right? And so if somebody wants to go to the bathroom and it's not their team's turn, they can totally just go to the bathroom and come back. Or if I have a kid who's at guidance and they come back like halfway through the game, just plug them into a team, and the kids are like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. These are the names that are. So, but even if that they don't really necessarily need to know what the list is, because it's coming in my realm, it's coming from a book that theoretically they've already read.
Right.
I play anywhere from a small advanced theater class of 12 kids all the way up to my big general English class of 26 kids. And all you have to do is you just keep the teams roughly the same general size, and you play between 4 and 6 teams, and it always keeps the game going. And and I would say they can jump in and out. So I see what you're saying, but I'm going to say it doesn't.
I the way you're doing it makes sense. I'm thinking if you're playing Time's Up.
Yes, that ridiculous game that copied a party game. Sure,
you can't jump in the second round and expect to do well because you don't know what the cards are.
That's
so. So you've got that.
If you're playing the actual out of the box game, you are right.
Right. I think that, but your version also makes sense to say that it does. Do you know there's another company producing the same game with a different title now?
Oh,
really?
I thought.
Yeah.
I
forget what it's called, but someone else reviewed it, and I'm like, that's Time's Up.
Yeah. Well, it's a generic party.
Which is 3-round charades.
Right. It's like
exactly.
Right. it's like boxing charades. I mean, it's charades.
Right.
You know, it's like boxing Pictionary. Oh wait. Cool. So that's actually a really good one, Craig, and that's such a hilarious party game that people should play that all the time. Sam, have you played Flux? Why other than it not being a great game in general, does it not?
So why is it on the list if it's not a great game?
Here's the problem with Flux.
So I'll actually tell you, I'm actually pretty friendly with the loonies.
Yeah.
I'm just I've played a lot of Flux in my day. I'm a little burned out on Flux, which is why it probably doesn't come out at my house that much.
Right.
It actually does tick all three boxes. Yeah, and for the right people, it's really the right game.
And non-gamers love it.
Yeah.
I mean, love it.
I'll break out Monty Python Flux or Zombie Flux and throw that at kids and just be like, here, go. They say, how do you play? I say, draw a card, play a card, go.
You got a Flux for every possible theme known to man. I mean,
it really does work.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got a theme that kids are into and you just and I find, by the way, when people find out that I'm into board gaming, this is almost always the quote unquote weird game that they play.
Right. Like Farkle.
I know a game. You ever heard of it? It's called Flux.
You ever heard of Farkle? Yes, I have heard of Farkle, and no, we're not playing it. Yes, same thing. So because it does seem like it would work in all those things, but I could see why you're burnt out of it. And
I've demoed many games.
Flux is such a great con, especially if you're going to a con that's not necessarily a board game con. Like I used to go to PAX a lot, which is a video game convention, and you're standing in line because all you do at PAX is stand in line. It's like Disney World for video games, and so where you're standing there, you pull out a deck of Flux cards. You're like, let's play Flux. And they're like, if they've heard of it, they want to play it. If they haven't, you can teach it. I mean, the rules are in the cards. There's literally no other rules, essentially. And you just play, and people love it. Like, this is hilarious. It's great. And it's really, once you play 2 or 3 games of Flux, you see one Flux, you've seen them all. But it's still sort of people like it. It's a great.
And you could always get one good play out of every new type.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's actually a Flux promo card called the Cafe Bonus, which while it's in play, if someone comes up and asks you about the game, you deal them 3 cards and they jump in, and then everyone gets a bonus card.
It's the ultimate in and out game, right?
Yeah, it really is.
I have one more for you. This one doesn't quite tick. It doesn't tick the unlimited number of players box, so this could be a problem. But are you familiar with Bandu?
Is it like a weird stacky game?
Yes, it's like an opposite of Jenga game.
I've seen it. I've never played it.
So I have a copy of this, and this for quite a few years, this was like my family's go-to game, and I could break it out anytime there was a gathering of like young adults or whatever, and they would love it. And it handles, I believe it's 6 players in the box, so it's not a huge number of people. But you could do it with teams, because what you could do is you could take turns being a person to stack. But the idea behind it is it's a stacking game with a little more meat on its bones. So what ends up happening is it's got all these funky wooden shapes in the box, right? So you got an egg-shaped piece. One piece looks like a train smokestack. One piece looks like a cylinder. You got these offset, rhombuses, all kinds of craziness in there, all kinds of wooden pieces. And each player gets a small wooden base. And each round, and you also get a small number of little plastic, what look like coffee beans. And each player gets a certain number of those to start. That's basically your currency. What you do is, when it's your turn, you can take one of the pieces of your choice out of the middle pile of all the wooden bits, and you can decide to either place it onto your piece, or you can pass it to the person on your right. So in the very beginning, I wouldn't want to keep anything, and Sam's to my right, and I really want to make Sam's day bad, so I might pick out the egg-shaped wooden piece. So here you go, Sam, do something with this egg. Now Sam then can decide, put it on his base and just suck it up and have to deal with it later, or Sam can pay 1 coffee bean to pass it to the player on his right. By the way, when you choose to pick a piece for your own, you can say, I'm going to take this piece for myself. Does anybody else want it? And then you get into a bidding war. So you can also bid. So and the reason you might take a piece is, let's say Sam gave me the egg, and I put the egg on my base. Uh-huh. Now I've got to get some kind of buildable surface on top of the egg. Well, in there might be a cylinder that perfectly goes over the egg and turns the egg into a flat top. So I want to get that piece on my egg so I can keep building on top of the egg. So I'll say, I'm going to take this piece. Meanwhile, someone else really wants that piece or keep me from getting it, so he might bid 1 coffee bean so he can get it instead of me.
So it's like dexterity, no thanks?
Yes. So it's really kind of cool. And while you can only play 6 players at once, you could have people on your team kind of alternately taking turns trying to put the piece on top of the tower. And it's not that long of a round, right? So when it's over, what happens is, at some point, as soon as one of the pieces of wood or more falls off your tower, so you're out, and then plays until there's only one person left. So really simple little stacking game, but I find the currency bit really adds a nice little strategic dilemma to the game and gives it a little more meat that gamers like, as well as just a fun family game. So again, it doesn't have a super high player count, but you could fit 10 players into it, teams of 2 or whatever. But I really enjoy Bandu. It's a great one, and again, super simple to teach. Like 30 seconds, you got the rules explained.
That's worth checking out. I like that.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's still made. I have a copy from my God knows when, but I bet you can still find it.
I think I saw one at Half Price Books.
There you go. Grab that then. Cool. Well, whew, that was Sam. That was really fascinating. I think it's amazing and awesome that you are able to combine your faith with your passion for games.
Well, are there any more games? I mean, we didn't go over his list. A lot of his list we've already talked about.
I think
there's
some
some on here that
we covered most of my list.
Okay.
Was the only other one that doesn't really tick so many boxes that I've had a lot of success with is Coup. The kids really dig on lying to each other.
Yes.
and so Coup, even though it's not so simple to teach the first time, it's one of those that you watch people playing it and then people just jump into the next round because it plays so quick.
Yeah.
And so because it's so quick and you can, the other, my rules aren't as important with it, but that one goes really well.
I find.
There's definitely more, but these are the ones that I tend to have the most success with.
I'm with you, Sam. I think one good tip is any game with deception and lying that makes deception and lying okay. Kids love.
Yeah,
and that's why I think Werewolf and Dead Last are great games because of that. And any game with trader mechanics, my kids love Dark Moon, for example, but that doesn't tick a lot of your other boxes. It's hard. It's kind of hard to explain. It plays a long time, and it's definitely not an unlimited number of players, although Halo 6. But yeah, any games with deception in them are always a big winner. And so Bang the Dice game's nice because it has that in there, and it's pretty easy to teach.
Right.
So
I have high hopes for Trader Mechanic, the Trader Mechanic game, which I backed up.
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes.
I'll have to check that out. Well, Sam, thank you so much. That was awesome stuff. So we're going to take a little break here, and we're going to come back after Total Fangirl with some specific reviews on Codenames and other great, quick, fun games.
My pleasure.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeman and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. It has been an exciting week, 2 weeks, I guess. Exciting 2 weeks if you happen to be a fan of Pokemon. Unless you've been living under a rock or you're in the wrong country, I guess, where there's a few places where you can't play it yet. I think it's everywhere. Pokemon Go has become all the rage. And, yep, we're playing. Russ and I and the girls were all playing, and we're having great fun. We've been out and we've been walking around in parks, and we have a park near our house, and we've never seen so many people wandering through this park. And we've been having a really good time with it. In fact, we went downtown in our little town on Sunday to have lunch on Main Street there, and there's a park there. There was, I think, sort of an impromptu get-together, and there were a whole bunch of people playing Pokemon, and there were a couple of stops there, and people kept putting out lures so that you could catch tons of Pokemon while you were there. And somebody had like an outdoor speaker, like a big speaker, and was playing music, Pokemon music. So it was kind of like a little party. And what was kind of fun and sort of neat to me is this particular park was right in downtown, and it's very tiny, and oftentimes it's not a place you would want to hang out. Can be a little seedy. There can be let's say an unsavory element in this park. And this particular Sunday, it was all families, and it was wonderful. And in its own little way, Pokemon Go helped clean up the park because everyone was there playing a game. No one was there doing anything nefarious. So it took an area of town that was normally not someplace you'd hang out and turned it into someplace really fun to spend some time. But the thing with Pokemon Go is that, adults are playing it, kids are playing it. I walked through airports, and it was hilarious because every time you got to a Pokestop or a gym, you'd see adults stop, and you like guys in business suits, and they sort of look at you like, yep, I'm playing the game too. And it was really fun. And it's sort of a sense of community, and you realize how many people are playing this. And it, I don't know, it sort of gives gamers like, hey, we're Legion, we're everywhere, look at us all. But people are taking a lot of heat for it, for playing the game. And I'm sure you've all seen the memes where people who aren't gamers maybe, or just think that it's a ridiculous waste of time, are complaining about why it's a ridiculous waste of time. And how, there's more important things to worry about in the world than your stupid Pokemon Go game. And you're right. There are more important things to worry about. In fact, I worry about those things all the time. Those things are what keep us up at night, worrying about all those many things. But that doesn't mean that we can't worry about those things. And also, at the same time, have a little fun so that we're not mindless, numb zombies who are so worried about everything and looking so gloomy and dark and, oh my goodness, what has become of the world, that we can't still enjoy the fun parts of it. And for a lot of people, Pokemon Go is one of the fun parts of it. And I feel like I've been defending it a lot lately. And I know there have been news reports of people who've been completely irresponsible and played in the car and had car accidents, and people who've wandered into traffic. And guys, that's not really the game's fault. Stupid is as stupid does. If you're playing Pokemon Go in the car or walking into traffic with your nose in your phone, you were just as likely to be text messaging and do the same thing. So, the game is not what's causing people to do that. Stupid people are stupid people. But I think that it's taking a lot of heat because there's adults that are enjoying this. Grown men and women who should be responsible and never enjoying life anymore. And to heck with that. If you enjoy something, if you enjoy a game, enjoy it. I don't care if you enjoy watching a kid's cartoon designed for 4-year-olds. If you enjoy watching that game and it brings you some joy and pleasure and it takes the load off of being an adult, then do it. It's not hurting anyone to do this. So I'm hoping all you folks who are playing Pokemon Go, and probably a fair number of the adults who are dealing with some of the negative, wasting your time, stupid kids game, get off my lawn kind of thing, shake it off. Because you know what? You guys are actually doing it right. You're enjoying something. You're not letting yourself be so overwhelmed by the negative things in the world that you can't enjoy something fun and easy and positive. So go and play your Pokemon Go. Go get your Pokemon. Go take over that gym. And the naysayers, let them be bored and just sit there and watch all of us having fun.
Sadly, my horn is not as good as Craig's, but it doesn't matter because that sound means Vic the Viking is coming, and that means the War Store has everything you need to get the war to your door. If it's new hotness from board games such as Star Trek Ascendancy, they've got it. If it's a miniature game, pretty much if it's any miniature game, they've got it, no doubt. From fantasy miniatures to historical miniatures, sci-fi, steampunk, War Machine, 40, Games Workshop, Weird Miniatures, Malifaux, you name it, they've got Infinity. They've got them all. It is fantastic. And not only the miniatures, not only the board games, but also all the great gaming aids. And that's really where I go to get all the hard-to-find bits and bobs you need. We as miniature wargamers particularly have all kinds of needs. But also don't forget, they have all the Chessex dice available there through them as well. So great dice. And the thing about this to remember is the War Store is second to none, not only for great deals on the internet, but also great service on the internet. So, you can go, it's your one-stop shop for everything you need to order, one quick order, pay shipping only once, get everything you need. And if there's any issues or any problems, you'll get emails written by humans to you telling you the status of your order, when it's going to be ready. If there's any issues, they take care of them for you immediately. Things do happen from time to time whenever you order from anyone. The magic is how you are treated, and the War Store treats you fantastically. So head on over to thewarstore.com and check out all the amazing options you have to flush out your gaming needs.
This is the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. And now we want to do a couple game reviews here. But before we get to all that, I realize, Sam, we neglected.
We have been remiss.
We have been remiss in a very important question here, which is, it's tradition here on the show. We have first-time guests on to ask them this important question, which is, of course, are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
I have been accused of such.
You have. Mm-hmm. Now, which games got you into the hobby?
It was pretty typical gateway fare. It was Magic and D&D. I was Magic first, I think. I was about 12. It was the very early days, right around Revised, when Fallen Empires was still out. And I was a big Magic player all through high school for a long time. I played D&D with friends as well. I started to get into some of the designer stuff in college. I got friendly with the Loonies. I got really into their pyramid games. Have you ever seen some of those?
Oh, yes, little plastic pyramids. Yep.
Looney pyramids I love. So, and then my wife's family were big gamers. So when we started dating, I actually got into some of the more European stuff, but it was Magic and D&D. I actually had a stint for a while as a freelance writer for Inquest magazine. If you remember the old Inquest magazine.
Oh, wow. So you've been in the industry for a while then. Just in and out
I had a weird column where I would take like tournament net decks that were like real tuned for killing people in tournaments.
Yeah.
And I would change them so that you could actually use them in like a casual multiplayer game.
Oh, that's
funny. My column. So
very cool, very cool. So now, of course, as we talked about earlier, you still of course play hardcore games, but you've gotten much more into the casual game category also for your.
Yeah, I've gone away from the hardcore stuff. It's pretty just jovial these days.
Yeah. So, but a couple of these games we talked about last, we really got to get into the details here because there's two great games that we mentioned earlier. One of them is Codenames, and the other one is Dead Last. And let's start with Codenames, Sam, and let's get into like a full, patented D6G review here of this thing.
Sure.
Because it's definitely, both these games, while small and could easily fit into our normal review time, are definitely worth a little closer look. So Codenames, I'll go through the basics here, Sam, and you chime in with the parts that you think are great. So what's neat about Codenames is, not that it came out last year, right? And it was published by Vlada. How do you pronounce Vlada's last name, Sam?
Chvátil.
Thank you. Very good. So Vlada's designer of a couple of my favorite games, Galaxy Trucker, as well as Dungeon Lords and many other great games. But his games are always very unique, very, very creative, and really almost always something just different from anything you've ever played before. And I think Codenames is really no exception to that. It's really a very interesting party game, right? 2 to 8 players, but it's really just 2 teams, and you can really get away with, as you mentioned earlier, Sam, right? There isn't really a limit to how many players per team. What's the biggest game of Codenames you've ever played?
I think with the people that were standing around and pseudo playing that were on a team, we were up to 20 or so.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's doable.
It's doable, but it's probably effective around 10 or less is probably.
Yeah, I would say a total of 10 to 14 is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and ideally have even number of players, but you can do it with odd, but ideally even.
Which we've handicapped that way sometimes too. You can have, 2 guessers on one team if they're pretty good, and you could have 8 on the other if they're not so confident.
What's amazing about this game is it plays really quick. About 15-minute play time. I found that to be pretty accurate, Sam. What do you think about is that?
Unless someone does a bonehead thing and ends it early, which can happen.
Yep.
It's usually about 10 to 15 minutes just in there.
Right, and it comes to the sand timer to keep you honest if you want. Came out last year, as I mentioned, and it's only about $20. So it's a pretty good value. Consider 20 players, 10 or more, 8 or more players. And let's talk about what you get in the box for that $20. It's mostly cards. You get 8 red cards for the red side. You get 8 blue cards. You get one of these double aging cards. It's either red or blue, and that really depends on which team goes first. Because the team that goes first needs one more card. You're going to get 7 bystander cards. You get an assassin card. You get 40 of these key cards, which is sort of like the maps of where the cards matter. More about that in a second. And then you get 200 double-sided code name cards. And they're double-sided, meaning there's different code names on each side. So you really have 400 code names that could show up, which really keep the game replayable. And you can imagine for expansions, all they can do is crank out more key cards and code name cards, and this game could really go on pretty much forever. And then also, you have the sand timer, which isn't really a core mechanic, but it's there in case someone's, analysis paralysis, and you can flip the thing over to keep people moving.
I've never once used it.
You don't have to, really. I haven't found either, but it's there if you want to.
Yeah.
So that's in the box. Sam, do you feel like it's pretty good value for $20 inside that box?
I feel like it is, for the amount of play and fun and the amount of people I've gotten to play and have fun with this game, it is a ridiculous value.
I agree. I mean, the cards, it's probably a standard value. They could probably charge $25 or even $30 for this, given how many people play it. I think they've got a good $20, $19 is their sweet spot.
I think when this came out last year at Gen Con, and you couldn't get it for a while. It was sold out, and it was going for like $80 on eBay.
Right.
And people were paying it. And if it were $35 for what you get in the box in the same game, I gladly would have paid it.
Yes, I think $20 is a great deal.
Yeah.
All right, and there's nice, there's not a lot of fancy art or anything in there. The agent cards have a little bit of art on them, But really the theme here, Sam, right, is that there's basically two spy agencies sort of working against each other.
Red versus blue.
Yeah, red versus blue, right. And these cards that are out in front of everybody, these codename cards, are the code names of different agents. And you're trying to identify the 8 or 9, depending if you go first or not, agents that are on your side, right, before the other team does. That's basically the fluff here. So setup is pretty simple. You're going to divide into two teams, red versus blue. Each team's going to pick someone to be their spy master, which is essentially the clue giver. And what you're going to do is you're going to set your table up in some kind of way so that the two spy masters from red and blue team are on one side of the table, and everyone else, red and blue, the big teams are on the other side of the table. So it's very important that only the spy masters are on one side and everybody else is on the other side, right? And the spy master then is going to shuffle up and deal out a 5x5 grid of these 25 of these codename cards. So you got 200 of these cards. You're going to deal out 25 of them in a grid of 5x5 face up. It's important you get a grid. And
there's a nice touch with the art here too, is that the words on the cards face both ways. It's written twice, so you don't have to read upside down.
Good point. And the words are simple, right? Like, what are some examples of some of the words on the cards? Banana.
Dig.
Right.
Pound. Yeah. Bark. Banana. You don't see stuff like banana. It's interesting. I read, and if you look at the cards, almost all of them can be thought to have more than one meaning.
Yes.
They were definitely chosen on purpose. They weren't just random words out of the dictionary.
Yeah, so more about that in a bit. So these code words, but they're all one word words, right?
Right.
English. 5x5 grid. Then the one card is the key card. It's sort of like this square card, and on the back of this card, there's a grid that matches the 5x5 grid you just laid out, but some of the spots on the grid are red. Some of the spots of the grid are blue. Some of them are sort of this beige color representing bystanders, and one of the squares is black. And this goes into a little slidey stand thing, and only the spy masters see this. So basically, by having this key card to look at, the spy masters now know which of the cards in that giant 5x5 grid you just laid out are for the blue team, and which of those are for the red team. Right? Is this making sense so far, Craig?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So I'm looking at a key card, and I now know that the card labeled, dig, right, is meant to be is matching the coordinates on my little key card of blue, and the card labeled fly or whatever is matching the coordinates of red, right? Now both spy masters now know, the red spy master and the blue spy masters now know which cards are which, but they're the only ones, because remember, the teams are on the other side of the table. They don't know which cards in that 5x5 grid match red and blue and black, right? And here's the thing. So that's pretty much set up. And you're pretty much at this point ready to start, right? Mm-hmm. Did I miss anything there, Sam?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Now, one of the things
it's very, very quick to
set. It's very quick. One other thing is there's this little, they call them lights, but there's little color indicators on the edge of the key card, and that's either going to be red or blue, which is going to tell you which team goes first. And the team that goes first has the advantage of guessing first, but they're going to have to guess 9 words to win, 9 locations to win, while the other team only has to guess 8. And the goal here, again, is to find all of your agents, all of your 9 or 8 agents, before the other guys do. But the other trick to this is you can't find the assassin. If one of the squares, remember, is black, so some of them are blue, some of them are red, some of them are beige, representing bystanders, non-agents, and one of them is black. If you, by accident, guess the black square, then the team that guesses the black square loses and the other team wins. So do not guess the assassin, right? So here's what happens. The spy master then, so whichever team is first, the spy master is going to say 2 things and only 2 things. He or she's going to give a 1-word clue, and he's going to say a number. So I might say country 2, right? Or England 2, or tree 2, or something like that. And what I'm telling you there, the word is giving you a hint that some number of cards out there are related to this word, and the number is how many cards there are. So if I'm saying country 2, what I'm saying is that 2 cards out there are related to the word country, and if I'm the spy master for the blue team, I'm telling the blue team those are blue agents, go pick them. Mm-hmm. So after I say that, so I say country 2, then what happens is the blue team now, if I'm the spy master for the blue team, They now sit down and they confer, right? What do you think he's talking about? Well, there's a card over there that says, Ireland, maybe not, but that sounds like a country to me. So maybe that's it. Or but it's usually vaguer than that, right, Sam? Can you give a better example? I'm having trouble coming up with a good example.
Like it could be, you could say like build 2.
There you go.
And one word might be pipes, and the other might be dig.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're building a building, you'd have to dig to put pipes in. Okay, so maybe that's the connection that you're trying to connect those two.
Right.
But then there might be something else there, like nail. And so you're trying to confer and figure out, well, is it that he's connecting these two specifically? Do you want me to steer away from that one? Why is it that they chose this clue specifically? Sometimes they didn't have such a good reason, and so you get thrown off. But that's the idea.
Right, and it's very important that the spy master not give any hints, verbal or otherwise, or facial tics or anything while the team is debating this, and they can't say anything like, oh, this is going to be a hard one, or I can't think of a good. You just got to say it. So you just say, build 2. Now, what happens?
We have some kids in my youth group who by rule must cover their faces with their hands.
Right. So then what happens is now the field operatives, the team, they go ahead and debate, and then one of them is going to be dictated as the person who's going to point to the card, and they're going to point and touch one of the cards and sort of ask the spy master, this is it. And then the spy master goes to those little deck of team cards, and if it is a blue team card, he puts down a blue card on top of that keyword saying, yep, you found one of the blue agents. Now, if I'm the blue team, that's good. You guessed properly. You can now go again. And you can guess the second word, because I said, because Sam said build 2, so we're thinking he's looking for 2 out there, so now we can go guess the second card. If we guessed incorrectly and it was a red team card by mistake, the red team card goes on top of it. Now you've helped the red team find one of their people, and your turn immediately ends, and now the red spy master gets to give a clue. So you basically just lost your turn and gave the red team some information. Mm-hmm. If you picked a bystander, you picked a card that's neither red nor blue, but not the assassin either, it's just beige. You put the beige card on top of it to show it's a bystander, and your turn also ends, but at least you didn't give any information up to red. Or you picked the assassin by mistake, and you just lost the game, right? Yeah. Those are the 3 things that happened. Hopefully you picked blue. Now, you have a couple options here. You can stop. So even if Sam said build 2, and we're not really sure what the second card is, and we guessed the first card right, we can still stop. We can say, well, we can't figure out what the second one is, we're going to stop, but I know he said build 2, we're going to stop. Or you could also, based on information from earlier turns, you can keep going. You can go 1 past the number. So if Sam said build 2, and we get the first 2, and then we said, we're going to go for 3, because based on an earlier clue, I think I just figured out what he meant. I think this other card is also there important, and we can touch that one too.
Right. What'll frequently happen is you'll get a clue, and maybe it's 2, and you'll narrow it down to 3. Mm-hmm. And you guess the wrong one. So now, for sure, what the other one must have been. Mm-hmm. You can go back on a later turn and get it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right. And that's pretty much it. So then after your turn's over, it's now the other team's spy master turn to give his team a clue. But of course, the other thing you're doing is listening to his spy master clues and their team's guesses, because if they get it wrong, you may have just figured out where their red spies are and now know which ones aren't yours also, right? So now you're starting to figure out
there's a lot to keep track of.
There really is. It's a very simple game, but there's a lot going on here. And what makes it really interesting is this need to give out these clues, and he can only say one word, and he can only give a number. So it's really tricky to try to figure out, you're looking out there, and it's kind of like, you're seeing the words like steel and wood or something like that, and you might be like, oh, weapons are made of steel and wood. So I'm going to say weapon 2. And they're like, what? Weapon 2? What the heck is he thinking, So
I imagine you can start some fights with family members with this game.
Oh,
it may have happened, yeah.
Yes, it may happen. So
that's the dumbest clue anybody's ever given.
Yep, there are some penalties. So that's pretty much the whole game. And again, you go to your done. So if you're the first team, you got to guess, 9 of these things. And if you're the second team, you got to get 8. When you get all 8, you win. And as Sam mentioned earlier, the game plays really, really quickly. And then what you do is you just rotate out who your spy master is. So next round, maybe you keep the same teams and just switch out who gets to give the clues this time on your team.
What is an invalid clue? The spy master gives an invalid clue.
Well, you can't. Okay, there's a few rules. You can't use any words for any of the cards on the grid.
Okay.
Right? So one of the cards is dig, and I don't see the dig card, and I see some other clues that are like cards like underground or something else, and I might say dig, and then the other spy master might go, wait, you can't say dig, it's on the plate table, right?
Well, actually, you can't use it until it's covered up.
Yes, that's true. Right?
So for instance, let's say the word horse is on the table, and you want to use the clue horseshoe. Well, you can't say horseshoe. But if the other team covers up horse, they get it.
Yeah.
then you can use the clue horseshoe to get iron round or something.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So if you do something wrong like that, the other spy master can say, "Whoop, you can't do that." And there's actually a penalty under the rules where your turn ends immediately, and the other spy master gets a free cover. So he basically covers a card with a red. He gives a card away. But basically, there's another nice rule in there that basically says don't get too. There are some basic rules about like, you can't use homonyms and you can't use certain words, but. Basically, if the other spy master agrees your clue is legal, it's legal. So you kind of have the other spy master is always kind of a judge, basically.
Gotcha.
Right. And also, the biggest deal that we run into is that it really must be a single word. If it's a compound word, it really needs to be a compound word and not two things that sound like a compound word.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. So
we run into that problem a lot with 3-round charades with my students.
Yeah.
That second round's a killer.
So Sam, did I miss any of the mechanics of the game? I think that's the whole thing.
Those are the gist of the mechanics. There's a few interesting things to point out. One is when you want to go and play again, not only do you just flip out your spy master, but you just flip over the cards because they're words on both sides. So you've got a whole new grid right there. And the key cards that you pointed out that show you where on the grid your words are, they're square. There's no top and bottom specified. So even if you were to memorize exactly where those cards were on a certain grid, by the time that card gets shuffled into the deck, and it might come out 90 degrees the other direction.
You're right, it changes it all. Right.
It's a brand new card in a brand new game. There's almost infinite replayability to the components that he gave you in there.
Yeah, exactly. And as I mentioned, there's 40 of these key cards. They're double-sided, right, Sam? And they're also rotatable. So
they're not double-sided.
Oh, they're not. You're right.
Because then you would see what. Yeah,
right. But still 40 of them rotatable, 3 different orientations, or whatever. It's 2 different orientations. So it's a lot, as you mentioned. It's a lot of combinations.
You will never play the same.
Yeah, you don't memorize the grid. So I think we should quickly rate this game and give final thoughts.
That's crazy. That sounds great.
So Craig,
yes,
in the style of a James Bond-ish double agent.
Yeah.
Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
How about in the style of a water skier who took a header 4 hours ago?
Okay, fine.
Let me think through the migraine.
All right, go for it.
A double agent.
Yeah.
Well, James, it looks like the jig is up. And you thought I was on your team all along. Jolly good. Well, you're wrong. In fact, you're so wrong, you should have known at least 2 acts ago in the movie that I was a bad guy. And I will tell you that this is how you should rate your double agents, James. You should rate them if they're really, really, really ridiculously obvious, like me, with my jolly English accent and all. That would be like a 2+. They're obvious. You should get them every time. Every time you roll a D6, 2 through 6, you've got the double agent. If I was really good and you couldn't tell, well, you didn't really want to deal with me because I was a really talented, well, then that would be a higher number. So let me, as a double agent, I've just confused you even more. A low number is good and a high number is bad.
Thank you, Migraine Craig. Excellent. So, Sam, what are your final thoughts on this game? What do you think of it?
This game works on every level with everyone I've played this with. I've played this with rabbis. I've played this with kids. I've played this with young kids. I've played this with gamers. I've played this with non-gamers. It just works with everyone. Vlada Chvátil not only has such unique and original designs, but he also has this real talent for taking really established ideas and turning them on their head. He did it with Pictomania. He took Pictionary and turned it into something totally unique and different. Mm-hmm. And this game is really at its core just password. Mm-hmm. But the addition of that grid makes it's a whole new level. This game should be, and I could actually see at some point in the future, being in every home.
Yeah,
it's that kind of game. The only possible knock I have against it is when you're waiting around for the clue giver to come up with a really tough clue. Mm-hmm. Even when the other team is taking their time guessing, in our house we allow for the non-guessing team to try and psych them out and convince them to pick the wrong word.
Right.
Which is maybe foul play, but we quite enjoy doing. So even that is quite fun. I mean, sometimes you'll have a real long wait if someone's really trying to nail down a tough clue. But other than that, it just, everything about this game is fun. The concept is so simple. I've seen people play this game without the cards, the word cards, by the way. People have taken out Dixit cards, laid out a grid of Dixit cards and played with those. Mm-hmm. In theory, you could play with a grid of 25 anything. The concept is brilliant. They're coming out with Codenames Pictures next year. I saw that,
yes.
Yeah. This is an easy 2+ with a reroll for me for pretty much anyone.
Yeah. I have to agree with you, Sam. I think game is fantastic. I sat down and played with just a bunch of our gamer buddies, and again, a group of gamers that works just as well with that as your family. We just played it, 3 or 4 games back to back because it's so fun. I sat down. I was a little unsure what was happening. I'll just guess. You get it in a heartbeat, and all of a sudden, it's just really interesting as the person gives you that one-word clue, and you just analyze those cards. And I agree with you. It's one of those things that's just a great. People like deduction games. It's essentially a deduction game, but you are operating with all the information both sides have, which is sort of really interesting. I like it, and as you said too, it's just very, very clever, very simple. The price point's right. There's really, I can't imagine anyone not enjoying this game unless you really prefer not group big player count games. Right. But it's a great family game. It's a great game. You kind of have Thanksgiving or a big or a holiday or whatever. You got a bunch of group people over. You can get just a great adventure going on with it. With 10 people or so, have a great time. So highly recommend it. I'm gonna agree with you, Sam. 2+ the reroll. I can't imagine anyone not enjoying this game.
I didn't even mention that it ticks all 3 of my boxes, except for the clue giver. Someone could really walk in and with a 5-second explanation be on a team and playing.
Yeah.
You could play with any number of people, and it's super fun and super
and you
accessible.
Can explain the rules in under a minute. Yeah, exactly. Craig, so after hearing all that, what is your desire to play this thing?
I would love to play this right now.
Oh, there you go. All right, excellent. There you go. Well, we'll do that after the show then. All right. Well, great. So that is Codenames. Basically, you see this thing in a store, buy it, add it to your collection. It's only $20. You won't be disappointed. Mm-hmm. Next up is Dead Last. Now, this is brandy new. So Codenames came out last year. Dead Last just shipped from our friends at Smirk and Dagger Games. Yeah. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want to give a little more detail here. It is a little box, card game box here. It does have a nice little plastic insert for some box control. It is $5 more than Codenames. So it's $24.95 for this game. Does handle a few more players. So this is a 6 to 12 player game. Okay.
Right.
So you need a little higher player count, where Codenames you can really get away with like 4 players. But it's more fun with more. This, you really need a higher player count to work. And it goes a little longer, 30 to 60 minutes, once your players know what they're doing to play. But you can also control game length a little bit. I'll get into that in a second. Mm-hmm. So this one is interesting. Basically, the theme here is it is a giant gang fight. You're not really sure which side everybody's on, and you're trying to survive and end with the most money. In this box you get for $25 is all cards and a little vacuum created plastic insert that has room for all the cards to be divided up. You're going to get 12.
It's actually a great little box control.
It really is,
insert.
actually, because there's like 12 little decks of cards with 12 cards each, and each player is going to get an entire deck of cards. So having a little way to divide those up, which they do in the game, is nice. So you get 12 player ID cards along with 12 voting cards for each player that are color coordinated with a player. You're going to get 80 little cards that represent gold bars. On one side, it's got little graphics of gold bars. On the other side, there is numbers from 3 to 5. And then there are 2 sets of 3 identical Final Showdown cards, and more about those in a minute. Right? So $25 for a good amount of cards. Pretty good deal. There's some nice artwork on the back. I think it's right there in good value for a card game. And again, I like it because you can get 12 players at the table really nice and fast, which is unusual in most games. So I think it's a good value for the number of players you get to the table. Now, setting it up is really pretty simple. What you're going to do is each player is going to pick a color. You're going to give them, what also comes in the game is the little plastic stands that allow you to stand one card up in front of yourself. So one of the card represents your player. It's got a cool colored silhouette of characters. So there might be a woman with a samurai sword, a man with a shotgun, a kid with a hat and a pistol, that kind of thing. So like, gang members about to fight. So you have these little cards standing up in front of you. You're going to get the matching deck with the back card backs to match your character. And then you're going to shuffle the gold bar deck and deal 4 of them up face down in the center of the table. That represents the gold you're fighting over right now.
And the gold has different number values on the back.
Yeah, so and
you don't find out what they are until you collect them.
That's
correct?
right, and no one else knows what you got. Right, so and the goal is to get to 25 points in a higher player count game and 24 points in a lower player count game. So basically, but again, you can control that gold count point you want to get to. So if you want a quicker game, just lower the points. So basically, you're going to get your deck, you're going to get these things standing up, and you're ready to play. Now, the game is played in multiple rounds, and essentially what you're going to do is you're going to conspire, and then you're going to vote to kill somebody, right? That's pretty much it. Now, the conspire phase is specified in the rule book to be about 1.5 minutes long, so there's not a timer in the game. You can, of course, use a watch if you want, but definitely keep it short. Don't let people conspire too long. But basically what's going to happen is there's going to be some amount of communication at the table, and then everybody's going to face down. Everybody's got in their little hand of cards a voting card matching a color of all the players at the table. So if I decide that it's time for Craig to die, I might give Sam a little symbol, like some kind of pointing at Craig that no one else sees or whatever. Maybe I'll flash Sam Craig's card. Craig's playing blue.
A surreptitious wink.
Yeah, I'll wink. Or maybe I'll flash him my blue card. Maybe if the table's sitting in a certain way, I'll hold a card up so that the right half of the table can see it. And I'll kind of point at the card and be like, we're voting for this guy. And then the rest of the side of the table's like, what just happened there? And then maybe meanwhile, Sam under the table showing someone on the other side of the table, Russ showed me blue. I say we vote red. Let's kill Russ, right? So there's this little bit of communication in some kind of very subtle way that happens. Then you're going to lock in your cards face down, and you all vote. When you say 1, 2, 3, flip, everybody flips their card over. And now we're looking at all the people voted to die. We're going to figure out who dies. Now, here's where it gets sort of interesting. Whoever got the most votes is now called the target. The target is killed. So if there's 10 people playing and 7 players voted to kill the red player is dead. He knocks over his little character card to show that he's dead. Don't leave the table. Rounds are pretty quick. You'll be back in the game in a second. If there's a tie, so let's say there's 10 players playing and 5 people voted to kill the red player and 5 people voted to kill the blue player, the red player and the blue player both are targets and both knocked down. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's any
people and people who voted, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Now, what happens then is though anybody who didn't vote for a target also dies. So if there's 10 players and 7 people voted to kill red and 3 people voted to kill other people, the red guy is dead and the 3 people who voted for somebody else are also dead. Right.
So if there's a tie, if you voted for either of those targets, you're okay.
Yes. Okay. As long as you voted in the majority.
For somebody who died.
For someone who dies, you're fine. If you're voting in the minority, you're dead along with the target. So the trick here is you need to not only not be the guy everybody votes for.
Sounds like high school nightmares.
You need to be in the voting block that wins. Right, exactly. Now,
you got to be in the in crowd,
right,
or you die.
Right. Now, here's where it gets twisted, though. So it would be very easy, though, for the entire table to say, hey, let's kill Sam, right? Like verbally, like, let's go kill Sam, everybody. There's a mistake in doing that, though, which is there's this one more card. There's 12 players that can be playing, but you've also got 12 voting cards. One of the voting cards is actually your own color. But that card, instead of saying vote to kill, blue, if I'm blue, it says ambush. So if I think the table's going to vote for me, instead of voting for someone else, I can put my ambush card face down. When I flip that card over during the vote, if I'm the guy that gets the most votes and I played ambush, instead of me dying, I kill one of the guys who voted for me. Everybody else who voted for me is okay, but the one of those guys is dead, and I'm still alive. And actually, when we were playing this, I pulled this off 3 times in a row.
Do you get to pick?
Yes, as the person who pulled the ambush card, I get to pick who. So if I think there's a ringleader over there, if I think Craig's pulling all the strings and everybody's listening to Craig, I'll cap Craig. So that'll break up their infrastructure there. Because you do get this little sort of group think going on where like the left side of the table is against the right side of the table, or the kids are against the adults, or whatever happens, or the Wakelins against the Gallants. The little cliques form instantly, which is interesting to watch.
You would think geographically it's just easier to communicate with
people. Usually ended up being geographic. The first few games it was very much like it was like the West Side Story, the left side of the table against the right side of the table, and we get ties every time. So both sides would die, and another one both sides would die, and then someone would crack and join the other team, and so that's pretty much the system. But then what happens is, so you do that. So let's say we got 10 players playing, and then I die, and then Craig dies, and Sam's still in, and it gets down to a couple things can happen. It'll either get down to just one guy left, in which case he gets all 4 of the gold cards in the middle. You stand everybody back up, and you start over. And again, now the person who won, if it was Sam, just got a really good head start because they got 4 cards, and those are between 3 and 5. So he could have just picked up like 20 points right there and be almost there winning. Or it gets down to 2 players. If it gets down to 2 players, the game mode changes a bit, and you get these final showdown cards. Now, as soon as you pick out the cards that say final showdown on the back, it is impossible.
It's the final showdown.
That's right. It is impossible not to sing those lyrics. It just happens every time. So be prepared for that. Thank you, Craig.
So you see, hey, Sam was whistling with me.
He was there. Good job, Sam. So on the back of these cards, this is final showdown. On the front of these cards, there's 3 choices. So the last 2 players look at these showdown cards, and they're each going to lock in one choice. They can lock in share, steal, or grab and go. A grab and go means basically no matter what the other player plays, you get 1 of the gold cards in the middle, and the other guy's going to get 3. Okay, unless he plays grab and go, in which case you each get 1 of the 2 cards stay out there. If you both play share, so if Sam plays share and I play share, then we each get 2 of the gold cards in the middle. If Sam plays share and I play steal, then I get all 4 and Sam gets nothing.
Oh, it's like the prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah. So, but if we both play steal, then you and I neither get anything, and everybody else at the table gets 1 gold card from the deck.
Oh.
So you got a kind of tough choice there, and more often than not, it gets down to 2 people. So this is usually what the little mini game happens to try to get those extra little points.
Oh, cool.
So that's really the whole game, and really the goal again is to be the first guy or gal to 24 or 25 points depending on your player count. And again, you can adjust that number if you got less time, play to 12 or whatever. That's it.
So I forget. Is it always 4 cards in the middle?
Yes, there's always 4 gold cards in the middle. Yep. So after the end of the round, players stand their guys up, and you'll restock the 4 gold cards in the middle, depending on what happened with these steals, share, or grab and go. And that's really it. That's the whole game. It's fast. It's fun. It's light. There is player elimination, but the rounds are so fast. You know, the overall game can take time if you're trying to get 24 points and different people are winning every round, but you're only out for a few seconds and you're back into play another round. So there isn't really...
That's not real player elimination.
Yeah, you're not really feeling like, I got to get up and go to the bathroom. You're like, I'm going to stay around and see... Because you're starting to... What ends up happening is after a few rounds, the alliances actually get firmer and firmer. And so then all of a sudden these like sub-cracks start coming in, and then there's like little debates happening between rounds, and it gets sort of really interesting. It gets very meta, which is fun.
I suspect some people also get more likely to be targeted as they show their true colors, and
yes,
you know, the steelier people might get targeted more often.
So I really like this game. I'll give my final thoughts first. I've played it before. I really like this game a lot. If you like trader mechanics and like games like Werewolf, I think this will go over well. It's not quite as it's not quite as one more roundy as I would say Codenames is, so I can't quite give it quite as good rating. But I think it's a great one to have in your bag of tricks, especially because it's just so fast and easy to play. Especially those rounds are quick and easy, and everybody's truly engaged. Where sometimes when you have 10-on-10 team play, it's sort of like everybody's playing, but they're kind of not, and some people are goofing around. Where this game, you're all engaged at the table. So I really like it a lot. I think for $25, you got a good deal here, and it's a nice twist on the classic let's play Werewolf. It gives a little more meat to that sort of style of game, and it's kind of fun to watch how the alliances unfold. It's the kind of thing when you explain it, everybody's like, okay, this might work, but then all of a sudden the teams sort of unfold, and the vengeance starts to dig in and want payback next round, and all that stuff starts to kick in really interestingly. So a lot of fun. What do you think, Sam? How does it sound to you?
This sounds truly perfect for what I use games for.
Awesome.
I mean, I know the exact kids in my group who are going to freak out over this game when I break it out and tell them how it works. I love this sort of game. I feel like there's some other games I've played that try and do something like this and sort of almost get there. And this might be the one that pulls all that together. I'm very, very excited to try this out.
Oh, good. Well, I think you're going to enjoy it. I hope you like it. Craig, what do you think after hearing this one?
Well, I heard
you saw it played, right?
I saw it played, and I heard this. I think it sounds really fun. I would rather play Codenames at the moment, but I think this could be a lot of fun with the right group. I think. And I would very much like to play both of them, actually.
It has a little bit of a cash and guns feel to it, but it handles the player count a little better. And it's a little less mechanics.
There was one confusing element that you said you had done wrong several times the day I watched you play. In like some sort of tie that shouldn't have been a tie, or
it was
something.
A tie. Yeah, when a tie, I forget, but everybody died. We were not having there be consequences when there was a tie, and there should have been. Mm-hmm. So that was the problem.
Oh, you mean a tie was just like rock, paper, scissors, shoot again?
Yeah, there was an event that was occurring where nobody got any gold, and that was wrong. So it made the game go too long.
Gotcha.
I think it was something like, there were rounds that happened where everybody could die. And I think I was doing it wrong. We were doing it wrong there. So there's basically always a winner unless everybody plays ambush. It's the only way that no one wins. Because if everybody plays ambush, then nobody can win because y'all played ambush and everybody would die. Right. But that's the only way that can happen.
You must have a really trustworthy group for that to happen.
That's right. Exactly. Well, you can get down to 3 players and everybody ambushes, and that's kind of weird.
I guess that I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So yeah, check it out. I think it's a good one, especially if you like those trader mechanic games. I think you'll like this one. So Sam, thank you so much for taking time.
What does Sam think about the game?
I think I asked him already.
Did you?
I think so.
I think we did.
Oh,
I'm excited to try it.
Concussion.
Yes, we'll blame the concussion. I asked you last, Craig. That was
okay.
You were clean up on that.
Okay. What are we talking about? Cash and guns?
You
yes,
go back. We're going to let Craig go back to bed and put some kind of a compress on his head.
I need a cold compress and some Tylenol, and I'll be
Sam,
fine.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. This has been a great show. Thank you very much for helping us put together. These bullets are the concepts anyway, were almost all Sam. So thank you for that.
Exactly. So Sam, if people want to follow up with what you're doing on the internet, is there a place they can go to kind of see what you're up to?
I can be found on Board Game Geek. My username is SammyZ, SammyZ. You can also email me sammyz@gmail.com if people just have questions about these types of things or anything I'm doing. If anyone is interested at all in the youth group work I do, our website is jsustl.org. But if anyone has any questions about bringing games in and working with kids or the work that I do, I'm happy to discuss it.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, thank you again, Sam, and have a great. We're sorry we're not going to see you at Gen Con, but hopefully we'll see you again soon at one of the major.
Hopefully in the near future. Hopefully next year. That's the plan.
Awesome. Well, take care, Sam.
All right. Have an excellent Gen Con and a great play by Mom.
Thanks.
This Jebber Notice is brought to you by our friends over at Patreon. Those people that went and wasted 2 minutes to watch that video, and then agreed to help us with the show anyway. Thanks. In particular this time around, it's the Andrew crew. Andrew Brown, Andrew Delaney, Andrew Gilmartin, Andrew Glassup, and Andrew Gray. Thank you, Andrews, and everybody, for all of your help. Did you ever notice how different people see different things differently? In particular, first of all, let me explain, because I feel like I'm selling you a bill of goods. You see, I don't know what you would even call it. It's not really accident prone, because half the time it's not accidents, but I don't know. Am I sickly? I don't know. Here's the issue, and why I may be speaking slightly differently at the moment. So I got really sick at the beginning of the summer, and so I sounded all, stuffed up and coffee. Not good coffee, but, bad coffee, like not really a word like that. And I was laid up for a week and a half and got a bunch of medicine, had to go to the doctor. So, and I was all better, mostly. Still coughing a little bit, but that's okay. Then on Monday of this week, my parents had a big family reunion. Cousins I haven't seen in a long time. One got married to a very nice Scottish man and lives over in England now. And so I said yes. So I took a day off from writing, and Reese and I went up and we went out on my dad's boat, and everything was going great. And my cousin who now lives in England really wanted to go water skiing, and she needed somebody to show her how. And here's a weird thing about me that's developed over the last 3 or 4 years. Whenever I do any kind of water sport like that, water skiing, tubing, that time I did the jet board, I get splitting migraine headaches right after, and nobody can explain it, and the doctors can't explain it, and it just makes my mother upset. But my dad was like, oh, please, just go water skiing. The boat's really slow, and it's really smooth, and I was like, okay, fine. So I went water skiing, and everything was okay, and I was getting a slight headache, but not that big a deal. And I eventually got tired because it was going so slow and it was so smooth that it really wasn't challenging that much. So it was just kind of zigzagging back and forth over the wake. And so I made the cutting gesture and let go of the rope. And what you're supposed to do is just glide to a nice gentle halt, and you sink as you're gliding back down. And as I was doing that, I got hit by a tiny little wave just at the end, flopped over, and went face first into the water. Didn't really think much of it. Hurt my face and my neck a tiny little bit, but didn't think much of it. Next day on Tuesday, I woke up with a really, really bad headache. It was sort of low grade usually, but then would spike really hard, and it really, really hurt. And it got kind of nervous, and I started writing. And I needed to write 5,000 words worth every day this week because I got to get ready for vacation next week. Sadly, the headaches kept getting worse and worse and worse on Tuesday. And Tuesday night, I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't have a concussion. So I had my wife do a little eye check to make sure that my pupils were dilating at the same rate, like she could tell. I don't know. And then the next day, I woke up on Wednesday morning with just excruciating pain. And I had to go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor. They did a full neurological makeup, and everything was fine. Sadly, that meant that they didn't really know how to deal with my headaches, and they did find that I'd sprained my neck when I landed, and they thought that that must be affecting the nerves that were giving me these headaches that were just coming like more and more frequently. So they gave me muscle relaxants, which I can't stand drugs of any kind. I hate it. I hate feeling like fuzzy and out of touch and out of control. But Karen, my wife, told me I had to take them all day yesterday. That being Wednesday. See, now I'm all, is it Friday? It's Friday. So that was, yesterday was Thursday. So I had to take them all day Thursday. I did sneak out after the doctors, and I went and saw in Independence Day. And I didn't think it was as bad as everybody else said, but that might have been the pain. So I came home. So all day yesterday on the couch, tried to watch Game of Thrones, the whole season 6. Kept falling asleep because I was on muscle relaxants. Woke up this morning feeling okay, but not still great. And my wife was like, okay, maybe not the muscle relaxants, but you can't write, you can't do anything else. We had already had to reschedule the next recording session from last night to tonight. So had to kind of hold the line there. So we recorded tonight with Menoth John. I think you guys are going to love it. It's really cool. He's an awesome guy. Lots of fun to listen to. Has his own show. And he's a good painter, and so we're talking about painting. We talked about Game of Thrones for the next Lost Chapter. It was great. The problem is that it's now way past the time I was supposed to take my next meds, and so now I'm like in pain, and then took it anyway. And so what was supposed to be a did you ever notice about the creative process has now been a did you ever notice about me telling you that I don't know, like I've got a headache and I'm on drugs. I don't know. So anyway, what I was going to say is there's generally two schools of thought for any sort of creative process. And one is what in my head I think of as the Michelangelo idea, where he could look at a block of marble and sees the perfect statue trapped in the block of marble, and his job is only to remove the pieces of marble that are not part of that perfect statue. And when you're talking about writing, that would be, you think of yourself as having this perfect book in you, and all you have to do is get those words exactly right and find the exact right words and the exact right names, and that means that you will be constantly working on that piece of art, because you're never quite going to be satisfied that you've gotten rid of all the stuff. The other side of it is that, and this is more what I think, when I sit down to write a book, it's going to be a different book if I sit down and write it now than it would have been if I wrote it 10 years ago. And I think that's obvious. I think it's a different book if I sit and write it 6 months ago. That's the thing. And so what I mean is, like, my book is going to be different now that I have missed these last 3 days of writing. And I'm going to miss tomorrow also as we go up to Maine for our vacation. And it's interesting, and it's sort of, I almost feel like it's kind of like cheating, because I'm like, I don't think there's perfection that I'm trying to find. I think I'm trying to tell a story. And so I don't agonize over individual words so much anymore, because like, I like the words, and I don't want to use this, like, you don't want to use the same word over and over again, or the same phrase over and over again. But at the same time, I don't think there's a perfect word out there for each successive word in every sentence. I think what I'm trying to do is I have a story I'm trying to tell, and I think the best example I can give is names, where you've got, like, you might agonize over the perfect name, but what I try to do, I come up with a bunch of names, and then whichever ones taste right for the characters, to me, I just use those, and I'll 90% of the time stick with those. Occasionally, there'll be a name where I'm like, this isn't working for me, and I'll go back, but it's more because the feel of the whole thing, if that makes any sense to you. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're trying to sit down and write your first book or your first short story, I wouldn't agonize over it, assuming that there's a perfection you're trying to strive for. Think about it as there's a story that you're trying to tell, and tell it to the best of your ability. And know for a fact that if you wait a year, it would be a totally different story. Like, I know for a fact that if I had written this book, I was supposed to write this book from January to May. That was my schedule. And I didn't even start it until July 1st. If I had written it January to May, I know for a fact it would be a totally different book, because now a lot of the plot and a lot of the world building that I did came specifically out of a couple events that happened to me over the course of the time I was supposed to be writing it. So don't get hung up on this perfection that you're trying to strive for. Rather, you're trying to tell a story, and it's going to be different from one day to the next. And it's going to be different if you did it 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 3 months ago. So just try to tell it. And that's something that's been sort of kicking around in my head lately. And I might have even talked a little bit about something similar earlier, but there's no way I'm going to remember that now with these muscle relaxants kicking in. So I better just say that's all I got to say for tonight. So thanks for listening, and remember what I said about using the save word over and over again. Yay!
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Are you good at impressions?
I'm very good at a few of them. One of them, unfortunately, is Bill Cosby.
Okay, well, that's fine. We'll pretend
that one changed in value, too.
It did. All right, go ahead with a Bill Cosby impression.
Well, you see, the problem with doing a Bill Cosby impression is that he turned out to be a terrible person, and no one wants to hear him say anything anymore.
That's scary.
If you're actually just making fun of him and the way that he talks, it doesn't seem to be quite as bad.
Nice. Who else are you good at?
I do a pretty good Smeagol.
Oh, Smeagol's excellent. Go ahead with Smeagol.
Smeagol would never be on the D6 generation.
Excellent. Very, very good, Sam. Those are quite impressive.
Thank you.
That's really good.
It's almost like part of your job is entertaining children.
It's almost as if I had done that before.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. So, do you get in trouble now for entertaining children with Bill Cosby's voice?
So I pointed out to some people the other day. I said, "Yeah, I can do." I used the word impression instead of impersonation. I said, "Yeah, I can do a pretty good Bill Cosby impression." They said, "Please don't do an impression of Bill Cosby."
Yeah, even inviting small children over for pudding doesn't sound the same.
The pudding was not what let's not go there.